Chapter 2066. Putting away the money card, Yun Qianxiong returned to the guest hall and listened enthusiastically to the conversation between the ancestor and the two Supreme Being disciples. Yun Qianxiong learned a lot from their conversation. The Yun ancestor and Hu Yun were completely absorbed in their conversation, completely forgetting Su Yu's existence. Su Yu was no longer important. He was as insignificant as a speck of dust. Even if he did not return, he did not attract any attention. After talking for a while, Su Yi and Su Jin gradually frowned and looked at each other. Why had Su Yu not returned after so long? Su Yi looked at Yun Qianxiong and said, "Manor Master Yun, is it convenient for you now?" Hearing that the Supreme Being disciples wanted to talk to him, Yun Qianxiong straightened his back, feeling nervous. He sat up straight and said, "Yes, please let me know if you need anything. Su Yu went out with you. Why hasn't he returned yet? Can you look for him?" She was actually asking about him? Yun Qianxiong thought it was something important and said, "Him? He has already left." Left? Su Yi and Su Jin were both surprised and immediately released their souls to scan the area. Indeed, there was no trace of Su Yu in the mansion. Yun Qianxiong said in a low voice, "Yes, he has repeatedly interrupted the conversation between the two of you. I asked him to be quiet for a while, and he wisely left on his own." Su Yi and Su Jin's expressions changed as they hurried outside. The Yun ancestor had long felt that Su Yu's relationship with the two Supreme Being disciples was not ordinary. Seeing their expressions change, his heart skipped a beat and he knew that something was wrong. "Both of you, please take a seat. I will let the people in the mansion go. How can I trouble you?" The Yun ancestor stopped them with a smile. "Get out of the way." Unexpectedly, Su Yi and Su Jin's faces were livid as they shouted angrily. Two pairs of eyes were filled with deep anger. The Yun ancestor felt that something was wrong. They had been talking to Su Yu in a friendly manner just now, but they had turned against him in the blink of an eye. There must be a reason. "That Su Yu, who is he?" the Yun ancestor asked. Yun Qianxiong also sensed that something was wrong. He said suspiciously, "Both of you need not be so nervous. He is just a nobody, and he is not worthy of your attention. I will let the people in the mansion look for him." "Shut up," the Yun ancestor scolded. He glared angrily at Yun Qianxiong. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that something was wrong. Why was his eldest son still acting like an idiot? Sure enough, Su Jin walked over with a cold face and pulled Yun Qianxiong down from his chair. Her eyes were filled with killing intent. "Small fry. The first place of the ecliptic assembly is a nobody, so what are you?" "What?" The ancestor of the Yun clan and Hu Yun were both shocked. Shouldn't the first place of the ecliptic assembly be Yan Chun of the North region? What is going on with Su Yu? Hu Yun was also shocked, even though he had expected it and knew that Su Yu's ranking in the ecliptic meeting would not be low. However, Hu Yun had never thought that he would be first. The old ancestor of the Yun clan was even more astonished. That silver-haired youth was the champion of the ecliptic meeting, and he was also the demon realm emissary that was personally appointed by the heaven-crippling Tao Master? It was no wonder that they did not discover the demon realm envoy mentioned in the notice. It turned out that Su Yu was the one. Yun Qianxiong froze on the spot and stammered, "Su is the demon realm messenger? He's just a sect leader of a small sect, how could he?" Before he could finish, he was slapped by the ancestor of the Yun clan. The ancestor said furiously, "Shut your dog's mouth." Even at this time, he was still spouting nonsense. The slap caused Yun Qianxiong to be completely sober. A great panic rose in his heart. It was like a mortal stepping on ice and suddenly falling into a hole in the ice, sinking continuously. Su Yi's pretty face was cold. "The two of us were ordered by our master to protect Mr. Su along the way. I never thought that you would have the guts to chase him away." Su Jin was also furious. A half-path civilization that is ranked 100 dares to openly oppose a supremacy. Humph, we will report this matter to our master and let him decide. Leaving him behind, the two of them left the four-symbol mansion in a flash, anxiously searching the entire city. Apart from Hu Yun, who immediately gave chase, everyone in the four-symbol mansion felt a chill run down their spines. The ancestor of the Yun clan was even more furious. They were about to fall out of the top 100 civilizations. What was the outcome of offending a supremacy? A single sentence could cause the four-symbol civilization to fall completely. Yun Qianxiong's mouth was dry, and he said in a daze, I didn't do it on purpose. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the junior he did not even bother to look at would be the champion of the Ecliptic Assembly, and the Demon Realm emissary at that. Slap. Another resounding slap, causing Yun Qianxiong's ears to ring. You evil creature! The ancestor of the Yun clan was furious. How could I allow a fool like you to be the mansion master? From now on, you are relieved of all your duties. His position as the mansion master was abolished. Yun Qianxiong was absent-minded. His position as the mansion master was abolished. This was the first time in the history of the four-symbol mansion, wasn't it? From now on, how could he have the face to stay in the four-symbol civilization? While he was absent-minded, his waist was kicked hard, causing him to roll on the ground continuously. His face was covered in dirt. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you looking for him? The ancestor of the Yun clan was almost roaring. Only then did Yun Qianxiong get up hurriedly. He mobilized the power of the four-symbol mansion and immediately headed to the civilization to search. Su Yu arrived at the inter-civilization transportation portal, silently waiting for Su Yi, Su Jin, and the others to finish their conversation. Suddenly, the inter-civilization transportation portal flashed, and a group of people appeared from within. Haha, Brother Yun was awe-inspiring in today's hunt, slaying 8 powerful giant beasts alone. I'm really an outstanding talent. Isn't that obvious? Brother Yun is the number one of the younger generation in the four-symbol civilization, and he has even seen the ecliptic meet. This is an experience that ordinary people like us can never have in our lifetime. Hearing their conversation, Su Yu could not help but look at them in surprise. As expected, he saw Yun Zhantian among them. He was in high spirits, listening to the flattery of the few people. It was as if he had completely forgotten the huge blow he had suffered at the ecliptic meet. Haha, you flatter me, you flatter me. Today, I'm holding a banquet at the Drunken Immortal Inn, and I'm inviting. As Yun Zhantian spoke, he suddenly glanced at Su Yu, who was standing outside the transportation portal, and thought he had seen wrongly. When he took a closer look, it turned out to be Su Yu. Hence, he froze there and did not finish his sentence. The few young men beside him who were fawning over him laughed. What banquet? We are looking forward to seeing Mr. Yun. How dare you come back? Yun Zhantian roared, interrupting the speaker. Yun Zhantian's face was full of resentment. The humiliation of being taught a lesson by Su Yu on the spot surfaced in his mind. After he had returned, he had immersed himself in hunting all day, trying his best to forget that unhappiness. He had thought he had forgotten, until Su Yu appeared in front of him again. Su Yu's eyes were calm. So what if I'm back? So what? Yun Zhantian's face was filled with hostility. It's fine if you were at the ecliptic meet, I can't do anything to you. But you should have returned to the four-symbol civilization. Yun Zhantian might not be a match for Su Yu if he were alone. Chapter 2067. Members of the Four-Symbol Mansion, heed my command. Yun Zhantian took out the token unique to the Four-Symbol Mansion and released a wave that covered a wide area. The experts of the Four-Symbol Mansion in the vicinity felt the disturbance and rushed over immediately. Unfortunately, Yun Zhantian's second uncle, Yun Jinghong, was also nearby. Sensing the disturbance, he quickly rushed over. Zhantian, what's the urgent message for? Yun Jinghong scanned his surroundings suspiciously, but didn't find anything urgent. Yun Zhantian stared at Su Yu and said, "You have insulted the four-symbol civilization. Naturally, you have to use the emergency transmission." Yun Jinghong's expression turned slightly cold. "How dare you insult the four-symbol civilization in front of the four-symbol mansion?" It wouldn't be a big deal if they talked behind his back, but it was a provocation to his face. "Who? Uncle, that's him." Yun Zhantian pointed at Su Yu. Yun Jinghong's gaze followed the direction of his hand and calmly said, "Report to the absolute ice prison of the four symbols civilization yourself. Don't make me rush you." His tone was filled with the dignity of a person in a high position. Yun Zhantian added, "In the absolute ice dungeon, the minimum imprisonment period is 100 years. Even if your cultivation has reached the level of a 5-crown martial emperor, you still won't be able to escape." He looked Su Yu up and down, then clasped his hands behind his back and said, "It's not too late to kneel and beg me now." Su Yu was silent for a moment before he said, "It seems like all of you think that I will definitely allow myself to be captured. Do you have any other choice?" Yun Zhantian shook his head. He did not understand where Su Yu's confidence came from. "Let me introduce to you," he said. "This person in front of you is my second uncle, the 5-crown divine warrior. I admit that your strength is higher than mine, but in front of a 5-crown emperor, you are nothing more than an ant." However, before he could finish speaking, Su Yu suddenly attacked. An Azura sword appeared in his palm, slashing at Yun Jinghong. When this sword appeared, Yun Jinghong was slightly stunned. He found it slightly familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Yun Jinghong's expression changed drastically when the mysterious sword technique was performed. An unforgettable memory surfaced in his mind. A young man named Yu Xian, with his initial stage 4-crown emperor stage cultivation, relied on his exquisite and extraordinary sword techniques to put him at a disadvantage. You're the Rain Immortal." Yun Jinghong's expression changed drastically, but he didn't show any fear. At that time, he was careless, so he suffered a loss. However, things were different now. It wouldn't be so easy to injure him again. Good, I've long wanted to meet you again." Yun Jinghong didn't retreat but advanced instead, heavenly turbo technique. When the two attacks collided, Yun Jinghong's confident face instantly stiffened. His face was gradually overwhelmed by shock as he was sent flying by the shock waves from the collision. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Yu, on the other hand, stood in his original position with his hands clasped behind his back. No matter how the shock wave struck him, he remained motionless. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. Su Yu was slightly superior. When it used its full strength, it could face off against an early-stage 5-crown emperor. The 5-crown divine warrior that you speak of does not seem to be much stronger than an ant like me. Su Yu looked at Yun Zhantian indifferently. This one glance scared Yun Zhantian so much that his soul almost left his body. He crushed his space talisman and fled on the spot. Su Yu did not even have the intention to chase after her. He kept his Azura sword and stood with his arms crossed, waiting for her to appear. Yun Zhantian teleported to a safe place in an instant and immediately sent a message to his father, Yun Qianxiong. "Father, quickly go to the number 9 Inter-Civilization Transportation Formation. Su Yu is back." Yun Qianxiong's face lit up when he received the message. He immediately led his people to the number 9 Inter-Civilization Transportation Formation. When they arrived, they saw Yun Jinghong leading the strong fighters of the four-symbol mansion, confronting Su Yu. Su Yu was safe and sound, but Yun Jinghong's mouth was full of divine blood. He looked like he had sustained serious injuries. Yun Qianxiong could not believe that it was Su Yu who had injured Yun Jinghong. But, thinking of his identity as the champion of the ecliptic meat, everything made sense. His eyes couldn't help but be filled with deep shock. He had cultivated for less than 100 years, but his overall abilities were above the early-stage 5-crown emperor. It would be difficult for such a person not to achieve great things in the future. Big brother, you came at the right time. We need to capture this person called Su Yu, Yun Jinghong said. Yun Qianxiong's eyelids drooped when he heard this. He hurriedly laughed and said, Mr. Su, so you are here. You really made us look for you. Su Yu looked at him indifferently and did not say a word. Then, he looked at Su Yi and Su Jin and said indifferently, Are you done talking? Su Yi and Su Jin's expressions were slightly unnatural. They were supposed to follow orders to protect Su Yu, but in the end, they had abandoned Su Yu to discuss with someone else for a long time. They did not even notice that Su Yu had disappeared. Now, Su Yu was waiting for them. Su Yi said, It's good that you are all right. Su Yu was expressionless. Since you are done talking, let's go. As he spoke, he stepped onto the transportation formation with one foot, not even looking at Yun Qianxiong. Su Yi and Su Jin followed him guiltily, secretly blaming themselves and worrying. If Su Yu reported them to the Tianquan sect master, they would not be able to get away scot-free. At that moment, Yun Zhantian, who had confirmed that he was safe, returned. He suddenly realized that Su Yu was about to leave, but his father and uncle were not doing anything. He could not help but feel anxious. Without thinking, he slashed at the transportation formation with his sword. The intercivilization transportation formation that was about to start suddenly dissipated and stopped operating. Yun Qianxiong, who was already nervous, was almost scared out of his wits when he saw this scene. Tian'er, stop! It was obvious that this shout was too late. The transportation formation vanished, and Su Yi and Su Jin fell out of it. Both of them were furious, and their hearts were burning with rage. Are you four symbols civilizations trying to rebel? Su Jin was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. All of them wanted to attack the emissaries appointed by the Tianquan sect master. Yun Zhantian did not know the depth of the situation, nor did he know who Su Yi and Su Jin were. He only thought that they were Su Yu's friends. The two of you, scram as far as you can. Unless you want to accompany Su Yu and stay in the Four Symbols civilization forever. Yun Zhantian snorted coldly. For safety reasons, he stood beside his father and said, Father, I don't think those two people are good people. Why don't we slap? However, what answered him was an angry slap from Yun Qianxiong. You are the one who is not good. He wanted to strangle his son to death. Didn't he see that the nominal disciple of the supreme martial artist was already on the verge of losing his temper? And he still said such words. Did he think that the four-symbol civilization had already been labeled as a rebel? After being slapped, Yun Zhantian's eyes were blank. Father, why did you hit me? You should have hit Su Yu, that little bastard. Slap, slap, slap. The 3 consecutive slaps sent Yun Zhantian spinning like a top. His mind was in a state of confusion. Little B****, I will cripple you. Yun Qianxiong's eyes looked as if he wanted to devour someone. Yun Zhantian was finally frightened, and he shut his mouth, not daring to say another word. No matter how stupid he was, he should have known that something must have happened for his father to have such a strange attitude. But what had happened? Chapter 2068. Yun Qianxiong stopped his son from causing trouble, then cupped his fists at Su Yu and the other two. My son is ignorant and offended you. I apologize on behalf of the Four-Symbol Mansion. Su Yi shook her head solemnly. Don't come over. We understand the Four-Symbol Mansion's attitude. Wait for the Yellow Division Palace's punishment. She raised her hand, throwing out a giant meteorite. At the same time, Su Jin's eyes were filled with caution, her body surging with desolation energy. She was prepared to attack at any time to guard against the Four-Symbol civilization. Yun Qianxiong's mind was in a mess. The Supreme Disciple had already judged them as traitors of the Yellow Division Palace. Listen to my explanation, it's all a misunderstanding. Yun Qianxiong really wanted to slap himself. He had chased Su Yu away first, His brothers had attacked Su Yu, and his son had interrupted their transportation. If it were him, he would also suspect the four-symbol mansion was up to no good. Seeing that they were about to leave and the four-symbol mansion was about to accuse them, a loud voice was heard. "Please wait." The Yun ancestor rushed over, his face flustered. It looked like he had already sensed the commotion. Because of this, he had lost his sense of propriety and was in a mess. If this was not handled properly, the four-symbol mansion would be destroyed. To the Yellow Division Palace, what was a mere four-symbol mansion? After destruction, there would be new civilizations willing to replace the four-symbol mansion. Even you want to attack? Su Jin's eyes darkened. The Yun ancestor opened his mouth to explain, but seeing how guarded they were, he knew that any explanation would be futile. Determination flashed in his eyes as he stared at Yun Zhantian. Then, he slapped the air. At once, Yun Zhantian clutched his abdomen and howled in pain. His body was like a deflated balloon, the desolation energy in his body leaking out continuously until there was not a trace left. His cultivation had been destroyed. Yun Zhantian will be demoted to a mortal, no longer related to the four-symbol mansion. Yun Qianxiong's heart ached. He was about to help him up when he heard the Yun ancestor say, "Yun Qianxiong will be expelled from the four-symbol mansion and the Yun clan. Execute immediately." Who would dare defy the Yun ancestor? Immediately, a large group of people from the four-symbol mansion rushed over and dragged the unconscious Yun Zhantian away. They also dragged the pale-faced Yun Qianxiong toward the intercivilization teleportation formation and drove him away. After he was done, the Yun ancestor said to Su Yu and the other two, "My teachings were not in vain, and I am also responsible for the current disaster. But I swear on my Tao heart that I have absolutely no intention of rebelling. Please investigate clearly." Su Yu looked at Su Yu, asking him to make a decision. Su Yu took a look at the Yun ancestor. He naturally knew that the four-symbol mansion had no intention of rebelling. It was just that Yun Qianxiong and his son were arrogant and looked down on others, causing a series of misunderstandings. It was already enough for the Yun clan's ancestor to place righteousness before family. "I know." Su Yu calmly nodded his head. He paused for a moment as he recalled how Yun Qianxiong valued boys over girls and treated Yun Qianxuang unfairly. He then said, "Among your descendants, there is one called Yun Qianxuang. She is a decent person, far better than Yun Zhantian. I have high hopes for her." Hearing that, the ancestor of the Yun clan heaved a sigh of relief. They had passed this hurdle. At the same time, he was surprised. "Young Master Su knows my great-granddaughter? I was the one who gave her the Path Master's bone that you obtained." Su Yu chuckled. This was the last time he would help Yun Qianxuang. Unexpectedly, the Yun clan's elder ancestor exclaimed in shock, "I was wondering how a mediocre person like Yun Qianxiong managed to obtain the Tao Master's bone. So it was a gift from Mr. Su. Just consider it a small friendship between me and Yun Qianxuang," Su Yu said. "Well then, until we meet again." He jumped onto the meteorite and was about to set off. However, the Yun clan's ancestor seemed to have suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, "Young Master Su, please wait." "What is it?" The ancestor of the Yun clan hesitated for a moment and said, "Actually, the reason why I was almost unable to escape from the demon realm was because I touched an item in the demon realm. That was why I was being chased. That item is useless to me, but it is a treasure to the demon realm. I originally planned to hand it over to the Ecliptic Palace Hall, but since young Master Su is the emissary of the Ecliptic Palace Hall, giving it to you is the same." He was repaying the kindness of Su Yu's Path Master. The treasure of the demon realm? Su Yu was slightly curious. Without waiting for Su Yu to ask, the Yun clan's ancestor took out a dark red hammer that was carved with strange patterns. "It was this item that I unintentionally saved a half-path master great demon who was covered in blood. Before he died, he entrusted it to me. Because of this item, I was being chased. The Yun clan's ancestor carefully looked at Su Yi and Su Jin. He had kept this matter a secret from Su Yi and Su Jin. In fact, he had wanted to keep the hammer for himself. Now that he was grateful for Su Yu's kindness, he took it out. Su Yu took it and sensed it for a moment. He did not find anything special about it. He had come into contact with many demons and had seen many treasures of the demon race. He could not see anything special about this hammer. Before the great demon died, he said that this seemed to be a hammer passed down from the royal family of the demon race. It was very important. Su Yu was even more surprised. After scrutinizing it for a long time, he realized that something was amiss. He was shocked to find that his soul energy could not penetrate the red hammer. Even his transparent eye could not. It is indeed unusual. Su Yu was secretly surprised. I will give this hammer to you, Mr. Su. I hope it will be of help to you in your trip to the demon realm. Su Yu thought for a moment, then took out a Bodhi fruit. He said, I don't deserve it. Keep this, it might be useful to you. The Yun clan's ancestor was overjoyed. This was the legendary Bodhi fruit that could help him break through bottlenecks. As a half-path master, although the Bodhi fruit did not have the nature-defying effect of breaking through to the path master level immediately, it could increase the probability of success. For the Yunshi ancestor, who longed for a breakthrough, the Bodhi fruit was more precious than anything else. After the exchange, Su Yu held the red hammer in his hand, cupped his fists slightly, and used the remaining intercivilization transportation portal to leave. In the Yellow Path Palace, at the Fairy Cloud Summit, the Heavenly Wings Master had 6 pairs of snow-white wings on his back. His eyes were brilliant purple. In the purple light, a figure was reflected. The figure was none other than Ze, one of the many strong men of the Sinful Lady Palace who had descended upon the Sea of Constellations years ago. Because she had gone to various great civilizations to look for Su Yu, she had managed to avoid being killed by Su Yu. Su Yu's whereabouts have been found. His next stop is the demon realm. The purple figure nodded slightly and said respectfully, The Sinful Lady will never forget the help that the Heavenly Wings Master has given to the Sinful Lady Palace. Somewhere far away, in a strange nothingness, countless civilizations adorned it, forming a magnificent picture as magnificent as the Milky Way. With the center as the focal point, the Milky Way kept rotating like a whirlpool. At this moment, Ze was holding a golden rope and throwing it into the depths of the whirlpool. A roar full of shocking evil energy came from the depths of the whirlpool. After waiting for decades, someone has finally come. Chapter 2069. Soon, he crawled out of the Milky Way. Shaking off the dust on his body, the purple-clothed youth laughed. Those 2 girls are really something. They tricked me into the void quicksand. Ze said with a straight face, The Sinful Lady did not let you out to find a woman. The purple-clothed youth was the purple-haired Su Yu. Back then, he had been tricked into the void quicksand by Yun Qianshuang and her niece. Oh? You want to teach me a lesson? The purple-haired Su Yu looked at Ze's graceful figure. Why don't you come to my bed and teach me a lesson? Ze said with disgust, Sure, as long as you don't mind, I am a man. Many of the women in the Sinful Lady Palace had changed their genders after swallowing pills. Only then did the purple-haired Su Yu retract his greed. What a bummer. Tell me, why did you find me? Of course it's business. Your old enemy Su Yu has shown himself. Where? The purple-haired Su Yu changed his demeanor. His eyes were cold, and his whole body exuded a threatening aura. Ze suddenly felt great pressure. She had no choice but to use her power to protect her body. She was shocked. The purple-haired Su Yu's aura was almost at the peak of the 5 crown martial emperors. It was hard to imagine that he only shared a 10,000th of the Sinful Lady Palace Master's cultivation. A few months ago, he appeared in the Yellow Palace. His whereabouts are unknown, but his destination is clear. Where? The demon realm. The purple-haired Su Yu's eyes shot out flames, burning all the meteorites into dust. He is just a soul of Su Yu. I have Su Yu's body. I am the real one, the purple-haired Su Yu said arrogantly. Stepping on the ground, the void shook and the Milky Way rolled. Ze only saw a rolling Milky Way, and the figure of the purple-haired Su Yu disappeared without a trace. She heaved a sigh of relief. What a terrifying cultivation! Not only his cultivation, but his body is also hiding something terrifying. A few years later. The Dark Star Civilization. The grassland around the former sacred mountain of civilization, the former Rising Sun tribe, had developed into the grassland's #1 tribe under the leadership of Mingguang. Go! A group of savage beasts galloped at the end of the plains. On the head of the savage beast, there was an adorable young lady dressed in fiery red clothes. She was Mingguang's granddaughter, Ming Dai. Hee, let's hurry back to the Rising Sun tribe before tonight. The girl ran on the grassland, feeling very happy. Suddenly, from the corner of her eyes, she saw a tiny human walking alone at the end of the world. She had long silver hair, simple clothes, and a crystal crown. Su Yu. Ming Dai rubbed her eyes in disbelief. When he opened his eyes again, that figure had already vanished without a trace, as if it had never existed. Ming Dai was startled for a long time. She shook her head. It must be an illusion. Su Yu has already gone to a higher-level civilization. Why would he come back? Unbeknownst to them, at the peak of the holy mountain, the sealed space was penetrated by some kind of powerful space law, and a silver-haired figure floated down. In the past, the holy mountain carried a great deal of pressure. Su Yu couldn't even climb the holy mountain. But now, he was able to stand at the peak of the sacred mountain with such ease. I wonder how the small Kylin is doing, Su Yu muttered to himself, while he swept the surroundings with his soul. He immediately discovered the small Kylin's existence. With a thought, he teleported over. The small Kylin was at the bottom of the valley of the holy mountain, in front of a huge block of ice. It was constantly using its ability to travel through nothingness to drill in and out. Do you need my help? The small Kylin was looking at its buttocks, using its claws to break the ice bit by bit. Upon hearing the voice, it waved its claws without hesitation. If even I can't handle it, what can you saints' servants do? Go away. But I'm very powerful. Maybe I can help you, Holy King? The small Kylin turned its head in dissatisfaction. If you talk any more, I'll punish you to clean the toilet. Su Yu? You. The small Kylin's eyes widened, and its purple eyes clearly reflected Su Yu's figure. Are you surprised? Su Yu smiled lightly. The small Kylin bared its teeth, using its body to block the huge block of ice behind it. It forced a smile and said, Surprise, of course I'm surprised, ha. Su Yu looked at the ice behind it with a faint smile and said, Why do I look like you're surprised? How could that be? What is our relationship? The small Kylin patted its chest. Su Yu agreed. Yes, so I'll help you take this good thing that you can't handle. Without giving the small Kylin a chance to resist, Su Yu placed his palm on the block of ice. Tiny space blades, as small as dust particles, melded into the ice. With a crashing sound, the ice shattered from the inside out, revealing the object wrapped in the ice. It was a jet-black metal wheel, exuding an extraordinary and mysterious aura. Su Yu was slightly stunned and said in surprise, A doctrine artifact fairy embryo? The object in front of him was definitely a doctrine artifact fairy embryo. Roar. All of a sudden, the small Kylin opened its mouth and was about to swallow it. Su Yu quickly took out the heavenly orchid silver bamboos fruit and stuffed it in its mouth. The fruit was like a bottomless pit that could absorb all kinds of energy, including the small Kylin's swallowing power. If it were any other treasure, it would have been swallowed into the world of nothingness in its stomach. However, it could not do anything about the heavenly orchid silver bamboos fruit, and its mouth was stuffed by the fruit. It could not swallow it, nor could it spit it out. After so many years, your ability to snatch things has improved. Suyu smiled. The little Qilin's mouth mumbled indistinctly. That's my. Suyu smiled and placed his palm on the wheel. A strange message flowed into his mind. The world-grinding wheel, a doctrine artifact fairy embryo. Its function was to accelerate time? Suyu was slightly surprised. Apart from his control of the law of time, which allowed him to accelerate time, there was actually a doctrine artifact fairy embryo with a similar function. The acceleration of time is 100 times. Suyu was slightly disappointed. Compared to the state where he could accelerate time by 500 times, a mere 100 times was not enough. This object must have been the doctrine artifact fairy embryo that Fu Bingyu had used in the past. Its function was to cultivate 100 times faster than outside. It's not very useful. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Suyu gave a simple evaluation, casually taking back the heavenly orchid silver bamboo's fruit. The small Kylan's face darkened. Why don't I feel happy at all? How could it be happy after being evaluated as trash by Suyu? Bitterly swallowing the world-grinding wheel into its stomach, the small Kylan looked at Suyu and muttered, "This bad guy's strength has increased explosively again. I thought I could crush it to the ground and make it call me Grand Aunt." Suyu looked at it with a faint smile. "What did you say? Can you speak a little louder?" The small Kylan immediately changed its muttering and said with a smile, "I'm saying that Master's magical powers are unparalleled and invincible." It was flattering Suyu insincerely. Little did it know that within the range of the Ecliptic Palace, Suyu was indeed invincible among his peers. "After sleeping for so many years, how has your strength improved?" Suyu asked. The small Kylan laughed slyly, opening its mouth to spit out densely packed water droplets that were the size of raindrops. It sprayed forward, covering an extremely wide area. If anyone was in front of it and was unguarded, they would be hit by the nothingness water droplets. At the very least, they would be turned into a sieve by the nothingness water droplets. "What, isn't it amazing?" the small Kylan boasted. Suyu praised it deeply. "Not bad, it's quite amazing. I'll have an extra chicken leg for dinner tonight." The small Kylan's face darkened. "I feel deeply insulted." The small Kylan briefly dealt with the matters of the Holy Mountain, jumped onto Suyu's shoulder, and went to the 10 main areas of the civilization. The 10 great forces of the past had long been annihilated, and only the tripod was left to unify the entire civilization. Suyu quietly came to the cave where the tree goddess was and quietly put down hundreds of space storage devices. Among them, there were acquired crystals that could be used to produce divine warriors of heaven and earth, rootless purple royal wood that could be used to break through to the half-step divine warrior, and even the Bodhi fruit that had been planted in the last 5 years, as well as various other resources that had been collected. These resources should be enough for them to make great progress once again. "Don't you want to stay and meet him?" the small Kylan said meaningfully. Suyu shook his head gently. "It's better not to meet him." After saying that, he left silently. Outside the Dark Star civilization, Suyu waited there in plain clothes. The group of people began to return. When passing by the Tai Chi faction, Suyu thought for a while and stopped for a while. In the battle with the human demon, he escaped with injuries and had never appeared again. No one knew where he was now. If he returned, the Tai Chi faction would be in danger. Fortunately, the Tai Chi faction was temporarily safe. He glanced at Tai Chi City and found that the Taishu faction that he had founded was still as popular as before. The only difference was that the shopkeeper was no longer Huangfu Liang, but Fairy Yin. Looking around, Suyu found Huangfu Liang in the Tai Chi faction. 20 to 30 years had passed, but Huangfu Liang's appearance had not changed much. However, his cultivation had broken through from the Double Crown Divine Warrior to the later stage of the Double Crown Divine Warrior. His progress could not be said to be slow. Now, he was the yin-yang elder of the Tai Chi faction and had become a part of the faction. At this moment, he was in his own house, chatting with Emo Xiaochai. Emo Xiaochai's belly was slightly bulging. She was obviously pregnant. Su Yu was surprised and appeared alone. He appeared without a sound, so Emo Xiaochai's sharp senses did not detect him until she saw a shadow from the corner of her eyes. She said in surprise, "Who is it?" When she saw who it was, she said in surprise, "Su Yu?" Huang Fu Liang was overjoyed. He went forward to hug him and said excitedly, "I didn't expect to see you again." Su Yu smiled. "Congratulations! Both of you have children now." Emo Xiaochai's face showed a rare shyness, and she rolled her eyes at Huang Fu Liang. The two of them exchanged glances, full of affection. Su Yu was amused. Back then, a freak combination of factors had led to today's marriage. After thinking for a while, Su Yu took out 2 Bodhi fruits, one for each of them. He said, "These are for you." Huang Fu Liang did not recognize them, but Emo Xiaochai recognized them instantly. She cried out in surprise, "Bodhi fruit? You got the Bodhi fruit?" Su Yu nodded slightly and took out a list. After opening it, he pointed at the name that was ranked 700. It was the Tai Chi faction. Chapter 2070. As for Emo Xiaochai, she stared at Su Yu suspiciously and said, "Could it be that you obtained a ranking in the Ecliptic Path meeting?" Huang Fu Liang's eyes lit up abruptly, and he said with disbelief, "Brother Su, what ranking did you obtain in the Ecliptic meeting? You were actually able to bring our Taiji sect's ranking from 70,000 to 700? "I barely managed to get on the list. It's not worth mentioning," Su Yu said. After that, Su Yu briefly chatted with them about his many years of experience. Huang Fu Liang was amazed. "Brother Su's experience in the past 20 years is more than what I've experienced in my entire life." Emo Xiaochai was also surprised. Su Yu's scripture was soul-stirring, and even an outsider like her couldn't help but be startled when she heard it. Su Yu also learned about the recent development of the Tai Chi faction from them. Because of the Cauldron's addition, it had brought with it a large amount of cheap resources, which led to the rapid development of the martial path of the Tai Chi faction. He believed that 100 years later, there would definitely be a few capable experts among the younger generation. After chatting for a while, Su Yu cupped his fists at the two of them. "It's getting late, I still have to rush back to the Ecliptic Palace." Huang Fu Liang felt it was a pity that they had to part ways after just meeting. He asked, "Brother Su, what are your plans for the future?" Su Yu said, "I'm going to the demonic dimension. There are 2 things I need to do." Huang Fu Liang's expression hadn't changed yet, but Emo Xiaochai's eyebrows were deeply knitted. "Are you going to the demon world? What's wrong with that?" Su Yu asked. Emo Xiaochai pondered for a long time. Then, she said, "Shall I go with you?" Su Yu was startled. He didn't understand what Dai Xiaochai was trying to say. Looking at Huang Fu Liang, he was also struggling. "Did something happen to you?" Su Yu asked as he sensed that something was amiss. After a long silence, Huang Fu Liang said, "Brother Su, have you ever thought about Xiaochai's identity?" Su Yu took a deep look at Emo Xiaochai and shook his head slightly. "She is a living creature with an extremely ancient lifespan." Su Yu still could not figure out his identity. According to the historical records, Emo Xiaochai was the one who presided over the coronation ceremony of the first 3 sovereigns. This could be traced back to 10 billion years ago. Living for more than 10 billion years was not something a sovereign realm expert could achieve. "It's not very old, it's not old," Huang Fu Liang said solemnly. Su Yu was shocked. "Unaging and undying? Are there really immortals in this world?" "Yes. In fact, I didn't appear before the 3 sovereigns. Instead, I appeared during the period of the first sovereign." Emo Xiaochai's words were earth-shattering. She revealed a shocking piece of information. The history of the first Taiji sect master could be traced back hundreds of billions of years. Even a Tao Lord would find it difficult to have such a long lifespan, right? Then you are. Mo Shao Chai replied leisurely, I'm from the demon sovereign's bloodline in the demon world. Hearing this, Su Yu's pupils shrank. The bloodline of the demon emperor has been passed down since the creation of the world. They can live as long as the heavens and the earth, and decay as long as the sun and the moon, Mo Shao Chai said. They have a nearly immortal life. It's a blessing, but it's also a misfortune. Demon Emperor. Su Yu's heart was in turmoil. If he remembered correctly, the nine-tailed white fox in the nine-jade spiritual pearl claimed to be the demon emperor's concubine, right? He continued to listen without batting an eyelid. Mo Shao Chai touched her slightly bulging belly. My child also has the bloodline of the demon emperor. After it is born, it will be like me, immortal and immortal. However, there are only two ways for a fetus with the bloodline of the demon emperor to be born. One of the ways is to use the Tower of the Demon Emperor to activate the bloodline of the Demon Emperor. She did not mention that the other method might be very difficult. Su Yu said, What happens if we don't use the Tower of the Demon Emperor? The fetus that is born will not live past one night. The fetus with the bloodline of the Demon Emperor was at two extremes. It would either live forever, or it would only live through one night. Huang Fu Liang's face was filled with pain. This is the only child between me and Shao Chai. I don't want it to die like this. So, we already had plans to go to the demon world. I just didn't expect Brother Su to also want to go. After listening to the reason, Su Yu slowly nodded. All right, let's go together. I believe that the supreme martial artist will have no objections if we bring two people with us to use the Rahu Heavenly Eye. The two explained and followed Su Yu back to the Ecliptic Palace. 5 years had passed since the beginning of time. 5 years of time was merely a negligible short period of time to the Ecliptic Palace that had never changed since ancient times. When he came back, everything was as usual. What was slightly different was that above the Ecliptic Palace, there was a huge mass of air circling faintly, covering the entire sky above the Ecliptic Palace. Its scale was unimaginably huge. If it appeared in other places, it could at least cross the distance of hundreds of five-star civilizations. With Su Yu's speed, it would probably take him about a year to cross it. Where did such a huge mass of air come from? As he was thinking, he felt a huge gust of Taoist will descend and wrap around him. The next moment, he, Huang Fu Liang, and the other two appeared in the great hall of the Tiancan Path Master. He stood in the hall, looked up, and said, You came back just in time. The Rahu Heavenly Eye is about to appear. Get ready. He glanced at Huang Fu Liang and Mo Shao Chai. He glanced at the former, and the latter stared at him for a moment. He was slightly surprised. The bloodline of the Demon Emperor? Mo Shao Chai looked flustered and immediately bowed. Greetings, Supreme Martial Artist. She was shocked. So you could establish a relationship with the Path Master? What did he experience in the Ecliptic Palace? What was his ranking in the Ecliptic meeting? No need to be so polite. The Tiancan Path Master waved his hand and said, Could it be God's will? Su Yu will be accompanied by the bloodline of the Demon Emperor when he goes to the demon realm. There was a faint sense of coincidence in the unseen world. Since all of you want to go to the demon realm, get ready together. A few days later, Su Yu, Huang Fu Liang, and Mo Shao Chai adjusted their state of mind. On this day, the huge air suddenly surged, and a huge rotating vortex appeared in the middle. In the vortex, a huge rotating eye suddenly appeared, and it made one's scalp go numb. Is that a living thing? Huang Fu Liang asked anxiously. The Tiancan Path Master said, The Rahu is a kind of creature that is between a living and a non-living creature. It has no fixed form and will follow a fixed path. Every once in a while, it will teleport to a region and stay for 3 days. We used its characteristics to achieve long-distance teleportation. As long as you hide in the eye of the Rahu, you can follow it to the next region, and the next region is the demon realm. In fact, the teleportation between the 6-star civilizations could no longer be satisfied by the intercivilization transportation portal. Because the distance was too great, even the Path Masters needed several years to travel, let alone the divine warriors of the universe. Therefore, the 6-star civilizations were basically built near the place where the Rahu appeared, and they used the Rahu's teleportation to achieve short-distance teleportation. Chapter 2071. The Tianqin Dao Master pointed 3 fingers at his forehead and drew out 3 beams of golden light, which shot into the chests of the other 3 people. The strong wind in the Luoho Heavenly Eye is so cold that anyone below the Dao Master level can't bear it. Only those who carry the Dao Master's Dao can suppress the strong wind, the Tianqin Dao Master reminded them. The Tianqin Dao Master reminded them. Then, he waved his sleeves, and a heaven-defying tornado swept Su Yu and the other 2 into the boundless sky. The Luoho Heavenly Eye, which seemed far away, was actually very far away. When the Yellow Path Palace beneath their feet was as small as a speck of dust, the Luoho Heavenly Eye above their heads didn't seem to be getting any closer. They flew up with the wind. After several hours, when the Yellow Path Palace couldn't be seen anymore, they finally arrived at the Luoho Heavenly Eye. Standing on the Luoho Heavenly Eye, they couldn't see the end of it. To their surprise, there was a sizable camp on the Luoho Heavenly Eye. All kinds of people were walking in it. It was very lively. It was far from what they had imagined. After thinking for a while, Su Yu understood. The journey of many martial artists often took hundreds of years. Over time, many martial artists built temporary camps on it. It was normal for it to be on such a scale. Hey, my 3 friends from the Tsangyang Mirror. Are you looking to rent a cave? As soon as they appeared, a shifty-looking middle-aged man rubbed his hands and asked with a smile. Su Yu had learned from the memory given by the Tianqin Dao Master that the Luoho Heavenly Eye was divided into day and night. During the day, it was the time for travelers to move around, but at night it was very dangerous. Only special caves could resist the dangers of the night. The sky was about to turn dark, and the people walking outside the camp were in a hurry. They were hurrying to their lodgings. "Lead the way," Su Yu said. The middle-aged man led the way with a smile. Before long, they arrived in front of a mountain. The so-called mountain was the dirt in the Luoho Heavenly Eye, which emitted a trace of the unique scent of the Luoho. As a beast, a faint trace of fear flashed through the purple eyes of the little Kailan. A deep cave was carved out of the mountain, and the cave was divided into 13 small caves. "There's just one left. If you don't think it's too crowded, you can make do with it," the middle-aged man said with a smile. "What's the price?" The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "The price is negotiable. 1 Dao coin per day." 1 Tao coin? Mo Xiao Chai's eyes widened. "I'm not going to the demon world. I want to stay here and earn money. No, I want to rob money." Ordinary people would find it difficult to obtain even 1 Dao coin. Now, by providing a cave abode, one could earn 1 Dao coin every day. If this wasn't robbery, what was? Huang Fu Liang was also surprised. "Isn't it too expensive?" The middle-aged man looked at the sky, which was almost completely dark, and chuckled. "Then you can find another place to stay." On one hand, he was bullying them because they were new here. On the other hand, he thought that it was too late and they didn't have time to look for other caves. So he demanded a high price. Su Yu had an indifferent look on his face as he took out a Tao coin and handed it over. To avoid attracting attention, he did not take out his golden card. However, the middle-aged man didn't take it, and his face lost its previous politeness. He said in an ambiguous tone, "I'm sorry, my cave residence is rented for at least 10 years. If it's 1 day less, then please find another place. Forgive me for not serving you." At this moment, the sky outside was completely dark. In the pitch-black night, a strange beast's roar could be faintly heard, which made one's hair stand on end. However, when one swept his soul outwards, he couldn't see through the darkness of the night. He didn't know what was inside. Mo Xiaochai and Huang Fu Liang were furious. It was as if they were taking advantage of the situation. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have trusted this person to come here. Now they didn't even have the right to choose. Now I've changed my mind. 2 Dao coins every night. The middle-aged man said with a faint smile. What? Huang Fu Liang glared at him angrily. This was too much. 3. The middle-aged man crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at them. When Huang Fu Liang was about to say something, Su Yu said indifferently, Okay, 3 a day for 10 years. Su Yu took out his golden card and handed over the 100,000 Dao coins. Haha, welcome to stay. The middle-aged man looked at Su Yu's golden card thoughtfully and said with a warm smile. Huang Fu Liang's face darkened. Without saying a word, he entered the cave residence with Mo Xiaochai and Su Yu. After sealing the cave residence, Huang Fu Liang said angrily, This is too much. They had been cheated by someone when they were not on guard. That was 100,000 Dao coins, a whole 100,000 Dao coins. Even if he worked hard for a lifetime, he wouldn't be able to get so many Dao coins. Mo Xiaochai also said, Su Yu, why should we give it to this kind of person? With the 3 of us joining forces, we don't have to be afraid of him at all, do we? Su Yu shook his head indifferently and looked around. Do you really think he dares to raise the price without any backup? Those who could enter the heavenly eyes of Luoho were all extraordinary people, who didn't have a trump card. Su Yu and the others were definitely not the first to be cheated, but the fact that the middle-aged man could survive until now was enough to explain the situation. He must have something to back him up. Hearing this, the 2 of them pondered for a while and agreed with him. But are we just going to let it go? Huang Fu Liang was unwilling to accept this. He had been cheated, and it was difficult for him to calm down. Su Yu shook his head slightly. Just take it as paying for a lesson. He looked at Mo Xiaochai's belly and shook his head secretly. If he was alone, he wouldn't let it go so easily. But Mo Xiaochai was pregnant, and if the child was hurt during a conflict, Huang Fu Liang and Mo Xiaochai would regret it for the rest of their lives. Huang Fu Liang was filled with hatred, but he looked at his unborn child and gritted his teeth slightly. I'll bear with this for now. The next day, the sky gradually brightened. As the roars of the beasts gradually faded away, Su Yu and the others left the cavern. When they looked outside, they saw many claw marks on the ground. The shape of the claw marks was strange, and they emitted a dangerous aura. Staring at the claw marks, Su Yu found them familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere before. Dear customer, did you rest well last night? A middle-aged shopkeeper walked out of the cavern nearest to the cave with a smile. It would be a miracle if he had rested well. Huang Fu Liang stared at him coldly. Su Yu withdrew his gaze and looked at him. Then, he went to another part of the camp with Huang Fu Liang and the others. The thievish-looking middle-aged man sneered to himself. So what if I'm angry? No matter how powerful I am, I'll just have to bear with it when I'm on the Luoho. The camp occupied a vast area. What was even rarer was that there were many travelers here all year round, so a trading business had developed. Many travelers set up stalls in front of the camp. Because the people here came from different civilizations, the things they were selling were very unique to different regions. There were many things that Su Yu couldn't recognize. The 3 of them browsed through the stalls and bought many things. Su Yu rarely sold anything. He only bought a unique picture scroll from a stall that sold picture scrolls. Many powerful demonic beasts were sealed within the picture scroll. The lowest level was a 4-crown divine warrior, while the highest was a 5-crown divine warrior. The price was quite high. Su Yu had to spend 10,000 Dao coins before the shopkeeper was willing to part with it. Brother Su, you're really rich. You bought such an expensive thing without even blinking. Huang Fu Liang clicked his tongue. Su Yu smiled. As long as it's useful to me, it doesn't matter how much it costs. The demonic sword technique had already been cultivated to the 8th style. Next would be the 9th style. He had spent a long time sparring with many strong men on the infinite stairs before he could slowly form the 8th style. The 9th style before him would require more actual combat in order to be cultivated successfully. This picture scroll with countless demonic beasts sealed within it was the ideal place to train. The three of them wandered around for a long time, and when the sky was about to turn dark, they returned to the cavern. Not long after, faint roars of beasts could be heard from outside the pitch-black cavern. It was unsettling. When the unknown beasts approached the cave, they all retreated because of the special scent emitted by the cave itself. They didn't dare to get too close, and they seemed very frightened. Su Yu and the others trained in the cavern with peace of mind. He took out the beast map and activated it. A rotating space appeared in the center of the picture. Su Yu's figure flashed and entered the picture. The picture looked like a cavern world, and there were many powerful demonic beasts inside. Their bodies were strong and they had innate talent. The most troublesome thing was that many of them lived in group. Su Yu's eyes locked on the early stage 5-crown divine warrior demonic beasts in the picture. He took out the Azura sword and charged forward. Nameless. He slashed at one of the early stage 5-crown divine warrior demonic beasts with all his might. The demonic beast howled and rolled on the ground before standing up unscathed. Other than a shallow scar on its skin, there were no other injuries. Su Yu was secretly surprised. They are indeed demonic beasts. If this sword had slashed at other early-stage 5-crown divine warrior creatures, they would have been cut in half. Only demonic beasts have incomparably strong bodies, so they can remain unscathed. However, for Su Yu, it was better that they could resist attacks. Su Yu held the hilt of the sword with both hands, pointing the sword straight up in front of his chest. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "The 9th style of the demonic sword technique, ultimate ruin." As the word ruin fell, the Azura sword seemed to come to life, throbbing with a bang. Layers upon layers of black sword shadows scattered from the Azura sword in all directions. The sword shadows contained an extremely domineering power. The demonic beast that was rushing over in anger suddenly sensed that something was wrong, and its eyes showed traces of fear as it retreated to avoid the sword shadows. However, it was too late, and it was still touched by a wisp of sword shadow. Creak! The demonic beast roared in pain, and where the sword shadow touched, a 3-inch long blood groove appeared, and the beast's blood flowed down continuously. This move completely enraged the demonic beast. It roared and rushed forward, spewing fierce flames from its mouth. Su Yu immediately dodged, dodging left and right, narrowly avoiding being burned by the raging flames. It took him a long time to shake off the demonic beast. Most of the clothes on his body were burned, and his hair was burnt. He looked extremely pathetic. However, his face was brimming with deep excitement. The 9th style was more powerful than expected. What he had just displayed was not even the surface of the 9th style, but the power that erupted was much stronger than the complete 8th style, and it directly cut open the demonic beast's hard skin. Chapter 2072. Perhaps even a 5-crown divine warrior would not be able to withstand this sword. After calming himself down and recovering from his injuries, Su Yu found the demonic beast again and continued to practice the 9th move. Soon, the roars of demonic beasts came from the beast map. This cultivation went on for 3 whole years. Huang Fu Liang and Mo Xiaochai also guarded the beast map, training to pass the time. On this day, the entire camp suddenly shook violently. Everyone seemed to have lost their balance and drifted forward on their own. Have we arrived at the next stop? Huang Fu Liang woke up with a start and then calmed down. Every few years, Luoho would stop. According to the map, this should be a civilization called Xiaoye. Swish! Swish! All of a sudden, a powerful aura descended outside the tent. The middle-aged man who was leisurely resting outside the cave residence immediately went out of the tent. He saw a blood-red coffin being carried by 8 people standing outside the camp. In front of the blood coffin stood an old man with black hair and exquisite clothes. There was a black beast horn on his forehead. His whole body emitted an unfathomable aura. The 8 people carrying the coffin were 8 feet tall, each with 8 arms and 4 eyes on their faces. The aura they emitted was also unfathomable. The middle-aged man's pupils shrank slightly. Immortals carrying the coffin, Dragonians leading the way. Could this be the legendary Yin-Yang merchant team? The Yin-Yang merchant team was a merchant team from the Great Beginning Realm. This merchant team consisted of 9 people. 8 of them were immortals with 8 arms and 4 eyes, while the other was a Dragonian. The strength of these 9 people was unfathomable. Some said they were peak 5-crown divine warriors, some said they were pathmasters, and some said they came from the sacred mountain in the Great Beginning Realm. They walked along the path of Luoho and then came to a civilization to hold the Yin-Yang fate reversal. The so-called Yin-Yang fate reversal was a trade fair. The Yin-Yang merchant team would hold a trade fair. They would provide rare treasures and others would pay the price. According to legend, all the treasures were in the blood-red coffin. The top treasures inside had even caused the Path Masters to fight over them. The rarest thing was that the value of the treasures was much lower than in the market. Every time it appeared, it meant a great business opportunity. However, the place where it appeared was extremely random. Sometimes it appeared in the bustling crowd, and sometimes it was in the wilderness that no one knew about. If one encountered it alone and happened to be able to buy a peerless treasure, that would be a great fortune. This caravan was full of legends and mysteries. The middle-aged man had stayed in the Luoho Heavenly Eye for several thousand years, so he had already heard creatures from all over the world talk about them. But he never believed it to be true. How could there be such a strange caravan in this world? Now, looking at the Yin-Yang caravan that was extremely similar to the rumors, the middle-aged man's heart thumped wildly. At this moment, thousands of figures entered the Rahu Heavenly Eye from the civilization system below like bamboo shoots after the rain. They were all from the Day-Night Civilization Department. Without a doubt, they had sensed the appearance of the Yin-Yang caravan and chased after them. The shocking part was that there was actually a half-step Dowlord amongst them. Their faces were burning with passion as they stared at the Yin-Yang caravan. The huge commotion caused a commotion in the entire campsite. More and more onlookers gathered. However, the Yin-Yang caravan did not do anything else. Instead, it remained where it was. The sky gradually darkened, and the faces of those who knew changed. Not good. Quickly find a dwelling to hide in. The 1,000 people who had just arrived rushed into the campsite and looked for dwellings. All of a sudden, all the dwellings were overcrowded, including the middle-aged man's cave. There were not enough dwellings, and even the corridor was occupied by people who paid a high price. The middle-aged man grinned from ear to ear. He had taken in more than 100 people, and every one of them had taken advantage of the situation and demanded 100 Dao coins. He had earned more than 10,000 Dao coins in one night. It was really a pleasant surprise. Boom! All of a sudden, the air trembled, and the surrounding aura froze. A middle-aged man in a loose robe stepped into the cave. The middle-aged man's eyelids trembled slightly, and he immediately stepped forward. "Dear guest, I'm sorry, but the dwellings are full. If you don't mind, you can stay in the corridor." The middle-aged man in the loose robe before him was none other than the half-step Dowlord from the Day-Night Civilization. "Forget about the corridor. Since there are no dwellings, I'll take my leave." The half-step Dowlord turned around and left. How could the middle-aged man miss such an important customer? He said, "Wait, let me think of a way for you." The middle-aged man turned his gaze toward the dwelling where Su Yu was and immediately knocked on the door. Huang Fu Liang opened the door and furrowed his brows. "What's the matter?" The middle-aged man said calmly, "A lord has come to lodge a complaint, and he is staying here temporarily. You have to bear with it for a night in the corridor." Upon hearing this, Huang Fu Liang almost thought that he had misheard, and his eyes turned cold. Why should we give way? The middle-aged man cast a sidelong glance at him. This is the dwelling I built, and if I ask you to stay in the corridor, then just stay in the corridor. If you say another word, get out immediately. Huang Fu Liang was annoyed. Are you mistaken? We paid for 10 years, so why are you chasing us away? Before he could finish his sentence, Mo Xiaochai pulled him back and shook her head slightly, signaling him to stop talking. This was because Mo Xiaochai had already noticed that the middle-aged man was hiding an offensive talisman at the midstage of the 5-crown Emperor realm. She was pregnant now, and even if she could win in a fight, she would have to pay a huge price. Huang Fu Liang felt like his chest was about to explode. He had never seen such a bully. He snorted inwardly and suppressed his anger. He was forced to leave the dwelling with the beast map, and he had to stay in the corridor. After vacating the room, the middle-aged man smiled apologetically. "Dear guest, please come in." The half-step Dowlord hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. In a world where the weak were prey to the strong, the weak did not have the right to be treated fairly. Huang Fu Liang felt humiliated, but he stayed with Mo Xiaochai in the ice-cold corridor for the whole night. The next morning, the beast map in his bosom suddenly trembled slightly. A space vortex appeared, and Su Yu, who was full of energy and wearing a smile, walked out of it. After 3 years of hard training, the returning ruins had finally cultivated to 30% of its level, and it was barely at the entry level. Although it was only at the entry level, the power of a single sword strike could kill an early-stage 5-crown Emperor realm demonic beast, no matter how strong it was. If he encountered a mid-stage 5-crown Emperor realm creature with a weak physique, he could also kill it with a single sword strike. As soon as he appeared, Su Yu realized that something was wrong with the environment. "Why are you in the corridor?" Su Yu was slightly surprised. Huang Fu Liang lowered his head and forced a smile. "No, nothing." Crack! As he spoke, the stone door of their dwelling opened, and the half-step Dowlord walked out without looking at them. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly, and he asked in a deep voice, "Why was our dwelling occupied by someone else?" Only then did Mo Xiaochai let out a faint sigh, and she told him everything that had happened. Su Yu's eyes turned cold when he learned that they had been driven out. Kind people get bullied. He probably thinks that we are easy to bully because we didn't resist. Su Yu let out a faint sigh. "I wanted to bear with it for a while, but it seems like he doesn't want it to be peaceful." "Let's find a place to talk," Su Yu said as he left the corridor with the two of them. At that moment, the middle-aged man was watching the half-step Dowlord leave. He heard Su Yu's sigh, and he looked at Su Yu with disdain. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Although he said that, he still left the cave without hesitation, and he went to a spacious cave in the camp. "Haha, what brings Nine-Headed Bird here?" In the cave, a 3-meter-tall demon, whose whole body was covered with totems, was leisurely tasting fine wine. He was served by several wild beauties. The middle-aged man's name was Nine-Headed Bird. He put on a flattering smile and said, in front of Lone Crocodile, "I'm just a 9-headed bird." Lone Crocodile stood up, patted his belly, and said, "One doesn't come to a temple without a cause. Tell me, what's the matter?" "Hee, it's nothing. 3 guests came recently, and it seems like they are going to cause trouble. So, I paid some protection fees to you in advance, and I hope you can calm them down." Lone Crocodile's eyes lit up. "Another fat sheep was slaughtered? How big are they?" "Not much, just 1 Tao coin per night, and I've been collecting them for 10 years, Nine-Headed Bird said with a smile. He had concealed most of the figures. Lone Crocodile shook his head with a smile. "You black-hearted bird, aren't you afraid of kicking an iron plate? With you here, so what if they are golden feet?" Nine-Headed Bird laughed. "As usual, I want half." Lone Crocodile stretched out 5 fingers. He also felt that he wouldn't run into a fierce dragon that he couldn't suppress. He was a middle-stage 5-crown divine warrior, and he had several talismans that could allow him to attack at the peak of a 5-crown divine warrior. Unless it was a half-dowlord, no one could do anything to him. Nine-headed bird handed over 15,000 Tau coins without hesitation. "All right, look for me if there's any trouble." Lone Crocodile waved his hand and sent Nine-headed bird away. They didn't know that a giant eye was slowly disappearing in the sky above their heads, and it was watching their every move. Somewhere in the campsite, Suyu opened his eyes slowly, and they flickered with green light. "Is he the one you're relying on?" After pondering for a moment, Suyu came up with a plan. After that, Suyu and the other two strolled around the campsite. It seemed like they were buying things, but they were actually gathering information. As expected, Nine-headed bird was a notorious black-hearted merchant in the campsite. He had cheated countless guests. However, Nine-headed bird was still safe and sound. This was because he knew how to bribe the experts in the campsite, such as Lone Crocodile, in addition to collecting money. He had encountered many vengeful guests, but they all ended up disappearing forever. This included the locals in the campsite. Although they hated Nine-headed bird's actions, they didn't dare say anything because they were afraid of Nine-headed bird's ruthlessness. Apart from relying on Lone Crocodile, Nine-headed bird was also a hidden early-stage 5-crown divine warrior. He claimed to be an early-stage 4-crown divine warrior, but he had accidentally revealed his early-stage 5-crown divine warrior strength a few times. Coupled with the fact that he had been operating for many years, he probably had a 5-crown divine warrior peak offensive talisman in his possession. After understanding this information, Huang Fu Liang secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, Mo Xiaochai had stopped him from attacking. Otherwise, the consequences would have been hard to predict. Chapter 2073. Why do we need to plan ahead? Suyu shook his head. If they were at the peak of the 5-crown divine realm, it might be a problem. But if we only rely on talismans, we might be able to deal with them. Huang Fuliang's eyes lit up. He knew that Suyu would never speak without thinking. He must have his reasons for saying so. "Haha, I have a feeling that the Nine-headed bird is going to be miserable." As the sky darkened, the three of them rushed back to the cave. Suyu's gaze was fixed on the Yin-Yang caravan, slightly surprised. Rumors about the Yin-Yang caravan could be heard everywhere in the campsite. They were almost mythical, and it was breathtaking. From yesterday until today, they had not left the same spot. Even when night fell, they did not move. When his gaze swept across the so-called coffin-carrying immortals and dragonmen, Suyu felt a sense of danger. His instincts told him that those 9 people were extremely dangerous, and it was best not to offend them. As for the blood coffin, Suyu resisted the urge to look inside. The Yin-Yang Fate Reversal Conference will not be held on the Luoho. They are probably preparing to head to the next area and are taking the Luoho along the way. Huang Fu Liang was regretful. However, it was enough to see the Yin-Yang caravan with his own eyes. As the sky darkened, the faint roars of beasts could be heard. Suyu sat cross-legged in the cave, looking into the darkness. A bloody light was especially eye-catching. That was the light emitted by the blood coffin of the Yin-Yang caravan. It seemed to have a huge deterrent effect on the unknown beings in the darkness. None of the beasts dared to approach it. In the dead of night, the martial artists in the corridor were all resting. Suyu's gaze wavered. It was time to act. He patted the little Kylan's head and said, "Can you determine the location of the Lone Crocodile in the night?" His stroll during the day had not been aimless. He had paid close attention to the Lone Crocodile's location. Would I forget?" the little Kylan said confidently. Suyu nodded. "Then let's act according to plan." He slowly closed his eyes and pretended as if nothing had happened. The little Qilin on his shoulder silently displayed its special skill, turning real into virtual. Its entire body blended into the illusion, and no one could detect its presence. It snuck into the outermost cave abode, where the 9-headed bird was happily counting its recent gains. Haha, I've earned another 30,000 Dao coins today. This Yin-Yang Chamber of Commerce is truly a fortune. Wealth is everywhere I go. Nine-headed bird carefully stored the Dao coins in his storage space. Looking at the dark sky outside, he habitually set up a powerful formation around the cave abode. Even the slightest movement could trigger a strong reaction from the formation. This formation required 100 Dao coins to be consumed in one night. The price could not be said to be low. However, Nine-headed bird had offended too many people over the years. If it wasn't careful, it would have died 100 times. But he never imagined that after he entered meditation, a purple illusory figure would silently enter, ignoring the formation and not causing any reaction. The little Kylan looked left and right. Finally, it used its talent in nothingness to stare at the side of the nine-headed bird. Hee. The little Kylan let out a sneaky laugh, then turned into a void and entered the space beside it. Without even causing a spatial fluctuation, it entered the immortal cave world. Wow! The little Kylan's eyes widened, shining brightly. What came into view was a dazzling array of treasures. There were rare items from different civilizations. There was a wide variety of them, and there were countless of them. Among them was a gold card with a balance of no less than 5 million Dao coins, which was 5 times Su Yu's current net worth. The little Kylan's eyes lit up, and it immediately accepted the card without hesitation. Then, it kept all the treasures. However, the little Kylan obeyed Su Yu's instructions. It had to find any hidden 5-crown peak-level offensive talismans. After some searching, it found a small hidden space in the space of the immortal cave world. When it opened it, there were 3 peak-level offensive talismans that were sealed. Haha, found it! The little Kylan swallowed them without hesitation. A moment later, the portable space was empty. Not even a single treasure was left behind. When the nine-headed bird checked the immortal cave world the next day, it would be a great surprise. After leaving the cave without a sound, the little Qilin ran out of the cave numbly without stopping its hooves, making its way into the dark night. As soon as it went out, it heard the roars of beasts. Then, it gradually returned to silence. The little Kylan appeared in front of the lone crocodile's cave. Using the same method, it easily entered the lone crocodile's cave abode and swept away everything it had accumulated over the years. Not even a blade of grass was left. No, only a piece of the sleeves of the nine-headed bird's clothes was left. Returning to Su Yu's place, the little Kylan was proud of itself. It quietly offered up the things it had obtained. Su Yu examined it and was slightly shocked. Apart from the gold card with 5 million Dao coins, the nine-headed bird's net worth was no less than 3 million in resources. Altogether, it was about 8 million. The lone crocodile was even more impressive. His total assets were no less than 11 million. Both of you are jackals of the same tribe. I will accept all the money you have earned through the blackmail. Su Yu smiled lightly. The next morning, many martial artists were still meditating when they were suddenly awakened by an earth-shattering roar. Who stole my things? The voice was filled with great panic and fear. The nine-headed bird stood at the entrance of the cave, wondering if it was having a nightmare. One night had passed, and all the things he had accumulated over the years were gone. He had examined the formation carefully. There were no signs that it had been disturbed. However, all the things in his storage space were gone. Someone must have stolen them. But who could it be? Who had the ability to pass through the formation without making a sound? What are you shouting about? The half-step Dao master walked out of the cave abode with a displeased look and stared at him. The nine-headed bird immediately hid his anger and said respectfully, I didn't mean to disturb you. Something unbelievable happened and I lost my composure. Only then did the half-step Dao master put away his displeasure and said calmly, Are you suspecting us because your things were stolen? Of course. He had checked his storage space before entering meditation last night. However, when he woke up this morning, everything had been stolen. In other words, the real culprit had attacked him last night. but at night no outsider would be able to enter the cave. Therefore, the real culprit could only be one of the guests present. However, he dared not suspect the half-step Tao master. He could only say, "I don't dare suspect you. I believe you wouldn't do such a thing, but someone else." He looked around at the many guests, not bothering to hide his suspicions. "That's a matter between you and them," the half-step Tao master said calmly. He then left the cave abode and approached the Enyang merchant group. He watched them carefully, fearing that they would leave without him knowing. Chapter 2074. He clasped his hands behind his back, his eyes dark. "I will give you one chance. Whoever did this, step forward and I will let bygones be bygones." What a joke! Why would anyone step forward? With nine-headed bird's viciousness, anyone who stepped forward would die. After waiting for a while, no one admitted. Nine-headed bird said darkly, "Not going to step forward? Fine. All of you, open your spatial storage devices and let me inspect them." Hearing this, the guests became agitated. "Why?" A mid-stage four-crown emperor with a goat head snorted angrily. Interspatial storage devices were a martial artist's most private secret. How could they let outsiders inspect them? Bang! Nine-headed bird answered him with a nomological technique. Combined with the peak four-crown emperor's cultivation, the attack heavily injured the goat head. He lay on the ground, unable to move. "Because I am stronger than you," Nine-headed bird said coldly. The guests were angry, but they did not dare to say anything. Compared to exposing their privacy, their safety was more important. Therefore, after struggling for a while, many people gave up and prepared to let Nine-headed bird inspect their spatial storage devices. However, at that moment, a shocking aura suddenly descended upon the cave. Nine-headed bird was shocked and confused. Solitary crocodile? He walked out of the cave and hid his displeasure. He forced a smile. What brings boss here? He felt strange. He had just seen solitary crocodile yesterday. Why was he here today? Could it be that something happened? However, as soon as he walked out of the cave, Nine-headed bird's vision went black. A giant black fist smashed into his face. Instantly, Nine-headed bird cried out in pain. He was thrown deep into the cave. The entire cave shook violently as if it was going to collapse. At the cave entrance, solitary crocodile walked out angrily. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. "You little bastard, you dare to attack me? You must be tired of living." Nine-headed bird was hit for no reason and was heavily injured. He wiped the blood from his mouth and said, "Boss, why did you?" Solitary crocodile took out a piece of torn sleeve and threw it at Nine-headed bird's face. He said coldly, "Why do you ask?" Nine-headed bird looked at the sleeve in surprise. "This is mine." "Why is it in Big Brother's hands?" Heh, it's not just in my hands. It's in my storage space." Lone crocodile's eyes were ice-cold. Nine-headed bird was also confused and quickly explained, I think I accidentally gave a piece of my sleeve to boss when I asked you to protect Fei Fei." He racked his brain, but he couldn't remember handing over a piece of clothing to boss. Your protection fee is gone." My years of hard work are gone as well. All that's left in my storage space is this sleeve. Don't you think it's strange?" Solitary crocodile's face was filled with killing intent. "Boss, you were also robbed?" Nine-headed bird was shocked. He quickly opened his storage dimension and said, "Last night, my storage dimension was also stolen." Lone crocodile was taken aback. He looked at the nine-headed bird with an even colder gaze. "Don't play this game with me, nine-headed bird. You stole my storage space and pretended to be a victim to get away with it, didn't you?" Lone crocodile said calmly, "If I remember correctly, the reason you traveled for thousands of years was to enter the monster realm, right? The next stop is the monster realm. You want to take my things and run away, right?" At that moment, Nine-headed bird could not explain what was going on even if he had 100 mouths. How did his sleeve end up in the solitary crocodile's storage space? Boss, please believe me. I'm also a victim. Lone Crocodile was a local tyrant and was overbearing. He wouldn't listen to Nine-Headed Bird's explanation. Moreover, he was a suspect. Why should he believe him? I don't care. I'll give you 1 day to return everything you took. Otherwise, I don't mind making a cave master disappear. In the past, it was always disobedient guests who disappeared. Now, it was very likely that Nine-Headed Bird himself would disappear. Deep fear filled his eyes. He wanted to explain himself, but he couldn't find a way to do so. Nine-Headed Bird fell into a state of panic and anxiety as he watched Lone Crocodile leave. He was the only one who knew that he hadn't stolen Lone Crocodile's storage space. If he was that capable, he wouldn't have needed to run a shady shop in a cave and risk his life to kill people. In just one night, the culprit had stolen from him and Lone Crocodile. This was enough to prove that the culprit had the ability to travel in the dark. There was only one person in Raho who could ignore the dangers in the dark: the Yin-Yang trade caravan. Even half-step Tao lords wouldn't dare to travel in the dark. Only the Yin-Yang trade caravan could. Moreover, the theft happened right after the Yin-Yang trade caravan arrived. How could it be so coincidental? Could they be imposters of the Yin-Yang trade caravan? Nine-Headed Bird thought. There were many scammers in history who impersonated the Yin-Yang trade caravan. There were countless scammers who fell for them because almost no one had seen the Yin-Yang trade caravan before. They could only guess from the legends. The more Nine-Headed Bird thought about it, the more suspicious he became. If I find out that you're imposters of the Yin-Yang trade caravan, I won't let you off. Nine-Headed Bird stared at the Yin-Yang trade caravan and observed them in secret. As night fell, most of the martial artists were asleep. However, Nine-Headed Bird was still observing the Yin-Yang trade caravan. They were faintly discernible in the darkness under the illumination of the blood light. After waiting for a long time, an extremely light cracking sound suddenly resounded from within the blood coffin. The sound was mixed with the low roar of a beast. If one didn't listen carefully, it would be very difficult to hear. Nine-Headed Bird's ears twitched. He immediately became alert and carefully observed the blood coffin. The lid of the blood coffin actually moved on its own, revealing a gap. A slender figure actually climbed out of the coffin and sneaked into the cave. Nine-Headed Bird was enraged when he saw this. It really was them. Because they possessed an ability that allowed them to not fear the dark, they snuck into caves in the dead of night to steal other people's belongings. Damn it! Not long after, the slender figure returned to the Yin-Yang trade caravan and spoke to the Dragon Man who led the way. Reporting to the 9 great paragons, there's no fated person worth trading with, the slender figure said. The Dragon Man nodded slightly and said, "We'll leave Rahu tomorrow." As he spoke, he glanced in Nine-Headed Bird's direction. The next day at dawn, the night had just receded when Lone Crocodile's powerful aura descended upon the cave. Nine-Headed Bird, 1 day has passed. Are you going to hand over my things, or do you want me to send you on your way? Lone Crocodile said calmly. Nine-Headed Bird hurriedly walked out and took out a memory crystal. Big brother, please calm down. Please take a look at this. Lone Crocodile glanced at it casually, but his eyes were fixed on the image. After a moment of silence, he said in a deep voice, "Are you saying that they did it? Big brother, do you think there are other possibilities? Apart from them, who else can travel fearlessly in the dark?" In fact, Lone Crocodile had also thought about this problem. The Nine-Headed Bird couldn't travel from his cave to his cave in the middle of the night, ignore all the restrictive spells, and empty his storage space without attracting his attention. Chapter 2075. Being suspicious was one thing, but with Lone Crocodile's experience, why would he take such a risk? Nine-Headed Bird, they are suspicious, but you haven't cleared your name yet. You won't be able to clear your name no matter how you explain it, Lone Crocodile said calmly. Nine-Headed Bird felt a headache coming on. The appearance of the sleeve was indeed strange. It couldn't be that the Yin-Yang trade team framed him, could it? It's easy to prove your innocence. Go confront the Yin-Yang trade team and return everything. Me? Nine-Headed Bird's heart went numb, but he had no choice but to walk over. You guys, how do you explain this scene? Nine-Headed Bird squeezed out a fierce expression and projected the memory in the air. However, the 9 people from the Yin-Yang trade team didn't even look at him. Hey, I'm asking you a question. Nine-Headed Bird put on a strong front and stepped forward to berate them. He was even more certain that the Yin-Yang trade team in front of him was a fake team. But at this moment, the eyes of the Dragon Man in the lead suddenly turned and slowly looked at the feet of the Nine-Headed Bird. He spoke with an ethereal and strange voice. Unless it's during the Yin-Yang fate reversal period, those who come within 3 feet will die. Nine-Headed Bird had heard of this rumor before. This was the reason why no one dared to go near the place even though everyone had been watching for the past few days. The Yin-Yang trade team could only go near when they were doing business. At other times, anyone who came within 3 feet of the place would die. According to the rumor, there was once an arrogant Tao master who didn't make it to the Yin-Yang fate reversal period in time because he came late. After it ended, he didn't listen to the advice and went closer. In the end, the Tao master suddenly died 3 years later. The cause of death was extremely strange. It was said that he drowned. However, what kind of person was the Tao master? How could he have drowned? But the strange thing was that he really drowned in the water just like a mortal. Hearing the Dragonoid's warning, Nine-Headed Bird was terrified. He wanted to retreat, but he heard Lone Crocodile's cold threat. Hurry up! Nine-Headed Bird felt bitter. He could only grit his teeth and go forward to grab the blood-red coffin. Let the person inside come out and we'll know. The moment he stepped within 3 feet of the coffin, Nine-Headed Bird suddenly felt a strange chill run from his feet to the top of his head. Vaguely, there seemed to be something extra in his body. At the same time, the Dragonoid looked at him as if he was looking at a dead man. Then, he extended a finger and pointed at him. Bang! However, with a muffled sound, Nine-Headed Bird felt as if the sky had collapsed. His entire body was sent flying like a sandbag, directly smashing his cave into pieces. The guests inside were so frightened that they screamed and ran out, their eyes filled with bewilderment. How hard was the Rahu eye stain? The Nine-Headed Bird had spent hundreds of years to slowly build up to its current size. But now it was all destroyed. One could only imagine how terrifying the impact was. However, what was even more shocking was that when the Nine-Headed Bird crawled out of the rubble, there was not a single wound on its body. The power of the Dragonman's finger pierced through the Nine-Headed Bird's body, but it did not harm it at all. His control over his power alone had reached the pinnacle of perfection. Only a Daolord could do it. Nine-Headed Bird's eyes were filled with shock, and Solitary Crocodile sucked in a breath of cold air. Could that really be the Yin-Yang caravan? The Dragonoid put down his finger and said calmly, "Let's go." The 8 immortals carrying the coffin turned around and jumped down from the Rahu eye stain. Yes, they jumped down directly. Su Yu's heart trembled. When the Rahu eye stain moved, it traveled through space. If they jumped down now, it would be the same as entering a chaotic space. Anyone below the Daolord level would have little chance of survival in a chaotic space. Looking at the Nine-Headed Bird, Su Yu's gaze wavered slightly. According to his plan, he had originally wanted to create conflict between Solitary Crocodile and the Nine-Headed Bird. He did not expect the Yin-Yang caravan to appear out of nowhere. However, the impact was not great. It looks like they really are the rumored Yin-Yang caravan. Solitary Crocodile's expression was one of deep regret. Missing out on the Yin-Yang caravan was a lifelong regret. However, compared to regret, the present was more important. His cold eyes stared back at the Nine-Headed Bird, and he said coldly, "Nine-Headed Bird, are you trying to tell me that the Yin-Yang caravan would covet my assets? Moreover, why did they only steal from me and not others? The nine-headed bird could not defend himself. Big brother, please listen to my explanation, I really did not. Suddenly, the nine-headed bird's gaze landed on Su Yu and the others, who were standing in front of the rubble. His mind roared. I know. It must be them. They were about to take revenge on me, and then our things were stolen. This is definitely not a coincidence. His instincts told him that it was the doing of the three people in front of him. Humph! With a cold grunt, Solitary Crocodile struck out with a rule, piercing through the nine-headed bird's body. He then pulled the nine-headed bird back and shouted, Enough! How many more times do you want to deny it? If Su Yu and the others really had the ability to traverse the dark night of Luoho, would they have tolerated the nine-headed bird's ruthlessness? I will bring you back to search your soul, and I will understand. The nine-headed bird was dragged away by Solitary Crocodile like a dead dog. Now that his cave had been destroyed and he had been targeted by Solitary Crocodile, one could imagine how miserable his fate would be. Even if he did not die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Huang Fu Liang could not help but laugh heartily. To think that he would have such a day! His gloominess had been swept away. Su Yu frowned. It is still too early to be happy. He pointed at the cave behind him, which had already been reduced to rubble. Not good. Quickly find a new cave. Mo Xiaochai realized that the situation was anything but reassuring. The Luoho Heavenly Eye was overcrowded, and it was hard to say whether they would be able to find a new cave. Sure enough, they searched everywhere but found nothing. Including Su Yu, the half-Dao master, and more than 40 other people, none of them had a new cave that they could use. As night fell, the people in the camp hurriedly returned to their own caves. Get out of my way! The half-Dao master wore an anxious look on his face as he barged into a cave. He tried in vain to throw one of the people in the corridor out and occupy the cave by force. However, he did not get what he wanted. The cave master sealed the cave in time, and no matter how powerful the half-Dao master's attacks were, they could not shake the cave in the slightest. The strange commotion here had alerted the other caves, and they all closed their caves in advance. The half-Dao master's continuous attacks were all fruitless. As the sky gradually darkened, his face became gloomy. He looked at the many people who were searching for caves like him, and muttered to himself, All of you, come over here. He released the half-Dao master's aura, which immediately gave the homeless a strong sense of security. The rest of the people gathered over, and after Su Yu pondered for a moment, he also led 2 people over. Night has fallen, and we have no caves to stay in. We can only help each other, the half-Dao master said. His words gave the panicking people some hope, and they all took him as their backbone. We will listen to you, Senior. What should we do? Senior, please tell us. The half-Dao master said, I am Zhang Yuanling from the Xiaoya civilization, and I will cross this crisis with all of you tonight. As long as we get through today, we will attack a cave tomorrow, and we will seize it no matter what. He then added, We are in a hurry, and we can only rely on the outside of the caves. We can borrow the aura of the Luoho Heavenly Eye to intimidate the existences in the night. At the same time, don't be stingy with your treasures, and take out all defensive treasures. Everyone's eyes flickered, and they were unwilling to accept this. However, this was a matter of life and death, and they did not have the right to choose. Hence, they chose a cave that was still intact. Their backs were against the cave, and they set up 10 layers of defensive formations outside the cave. In addition, there were 8 defensive light barriers, and 3 defensive shields. Apart from the layers of defensive formations, all of them held their offensive treasures in their hands, and they were ready to attack any invading enemies. When night fell, everyone's heart tightened, including the half-Dao masters. Rustle. Unlike the previous days, where the roars of beasts could be heard everywhere, today's night was exceptionally quiet. It was so quiet that even the faint rustling sounds could be heard clearly. Those rustling sounds were the sound of crawling footsteps, but none of the 40 people present moved. So, the source of the sound was creak. A mournful and shrill cry suddenly appeared 3 meters away from them. Everyone's hearts thumped, and they were all startled. Before they could see clearly what it was, the outermost defensive formation flickered intensely. All they saw was an afterimage flickering before it disappeared into the darkness. "It's coming. Be careful," Zhang Yuanling said in a deep voice. At the same time, the living beings in the caves held their breaths as they watched Su Yu and the others fight against the wild beasts. They were all worried for them. Although they couldn't see anything in the darkness, they could still hear Su Yu and the others' voices. After the first unknown existence attacked the defensive formation, the night became quiet once again, and not a single sound could be heard. However, the unusual silence made them feel more and more uneasy. It was like the deathly stillness before the arrival of a storm, and they all sensed a great danger. Rustle! 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 It was as if a gale had blown up and filled the sky with dust. Rustling sounds could be heard everywhere. Although they couldn't see them, they could sense that a sea of unknown living beings was approaching them. Rustle! Rustle! The sounds became faster and more urgent, and they were getting closer and closer. The sounds were like war drums, and they pounded on their chests one after another, causing them to despair. There wasn't just 1, 10, or 100 of them, but thousands upon thousands of them. Crack! The first layer of the defensive formation collapsed in an instant. The destructive light of the formation flickered and illuminated a small part of the sky. They took advantage of this opportunity to see the situation in front of them clearly, and they all sucked in breaths of cold air. They saw many purple-scaled living beings of different sizes, and they all emitted a dense evil energy as they crawled toward them at an extremely fast speed. There was an endless number of them, and they surged toward them like a tide. Everyone's expressions changed drastically when they saw such a sight. Su Yu was just as shocked. Others might not know what these monsters were, but how could Su Yu not recognize them? In the Tsangyang mirror, many of the living beings on the creation sea of the Pathmaster had been contaminated by the water of the creation sea and turned into purple-scaled evil beings. Weren't the monsters in front of them those evil beings? Chapter 2076. Or perhaps, how could the creation Tao Lord's creation seawater create an evil creature that was exactly the same as the one before him? Su Yu's heart sank. Having personally fought the evil creatures, Su Yu knew how powerful they were. An ordinary early-stage 5-crown divine warrior could not do anything to them. And the only 5-crown divine warrior before him was Mo Shaochai. The rest were only half-step pathmasters. There was no way they could resist them. Crack! Under the onslaught of the horde of beasts, 3 formations were destroyed. The formations, which had been estimated to last for 15 minutes, could not even hold on for a breath under the onslaught of the evil creatures. "Everyone, prepare for battle," Zhang Yuanling said. The situation was 100 times worse than expected, but after a series of crackling sounds, the 10 arrays were all broken. Then came the 8 defensive light barriers. Compared to the formations, they held on for a while longer. In just 2 breaths, the first light barrier was destroyed. Then came the second, third, fourth, until all the defensive light barriers were destroyed. Finally, only 3 shields were left. That was the only defense they had left, but in the face of the horde of beasts, it was like paper, unable to withstand a single blow. In just 10 breaths, the 3 shields were destroyed one after another. Attack! Zhang Yuanling's eyelids twitched. With a loud roar, he used a powerful law. Just as he finished speaking, a miserable shriek came from the side. It was a woman near the edge. An evil creature had grabbed her legs at an extremely fast speed and dragged her into the horde of beasts. Her shriek stopped abruptly, drowned out by the hungry and thirsty sounds of the horde of beasts. Everyone reacted, using their treasures one after another. The colorful treasures exploded with impressive power. But when they struck the body of the purple evil creature, they did not even leave a mark. They were all sent flying. Their attacks were like scratches to the purple evil creature. They did not cause any harm. The purple evil creature continued to drag them away as if it had not encountered any resistance. Living creatures were dragged away one after another, buried in the jaws of the evil creature. Apart from Zhang Yuanling's attack, which instantly injured a large number of them, the attacks of the rest were useless. Seeing that they were defenseless, everyone's hearts sank into despair. The night had just begun, and they had already lost 10 companions. In less than a quarter of an hour, they would be completely annihilated and buried here. Zhang Yuanling's eyes flickered as he looked at the tide of evil beings and thought to himself, most of the evil beings should have been attracted here, right? He did not gather everyone with good intentions. He wanted to use them as bait to attract all the things in the night. Only then would he have a greater chance of escaping. As for protecting their safety, did they have anything to do with it? Why would he sacrifice himself to protect them? With a loud shout, Zhang Yuanling blasted away a large number of evil beings with a palm strike and shouted, "You guys hold on, I'll be back soon." He didn't wait for the others to catch up to him before he leaped up and teleported away with the formidable speed of a half-step Dowlord. Some of the evil beings hesitated for a moment. They looked in the direction that Zhang Yuanling had escaped, and then looked at the 30 or so people present. None of them chased after him. Immediately, those who were slightly smarter understood Zhang Yuanling's intentions. They were terrified and angry. "We've been tricked." Unfortunately, without Zhang Yuanling's support, the evil beings surged forward in large numbers. The 10 people at the outermost layer were instantly dragged away. Su Yu's face darkened. At this moment, he could only face them alone. With his experience fighting against the purple evil beings, his previous sword techniques were useless. He could only use a new sword technique. 9th stroke of the demonic sword technique, Ultimate Ruin. As the sword rose, thousands of shadows appeared. Every time a sword shadow flew out, it would kill an evil being. In an instant, the approaching evil beings were all killed. The despairing crowd's spirits were lifted, and they gathered around Su Yu. However, it was difficult for Su Yu to deal with all the evil beings by himself. As the desolate power in his body dissipated at an alarming speed, the follow-up attacks gradually became weaker. The evil beings closed in again. Su Yu's eyes were filled with determination. If there was no other way, he could only abandon the others and escape with Huangfu Liang and Mo Shaochai. With his speed, which was comparable to the peak of the 5 crowned divine warriors, he could escape from the evil beings' encirclement in an instant. Seeing that the evil beings were closing in, Su Yu was about to make a decision. Suddenly, Mo Xiaochai's bulging belly released a faint blood-red light. Wherever the light shone, the evil beings retreated in fear, their faces filled with fear. None of the huge group of beasts dared to step into the range of the bloodlight. The frightened people stared at Mo Xiaochai's belly and said, "The fetus in her belly can intimidate these monsters. Quick, let her stand at the front." The crowd pushed and shoved Mo Xiaochai to the front. Mo Xiaochai was indignant, but she knew that this was not the time to argue. She braced herself and stood at the front. The people behind her were nervous, silently hoping that the blood light would not be extinguished. That was their only hope of survival. Su Yu and Huangfu Liang protected Mo Xiaochai on both sides, quietly observing the situation. Time passed bit by bit. Everyone was on tenterhooks, silently counting the time. They had never thought that a night could be so long. Every minute and second was a deep torture. It was as if a whole year had passed. Finally, a faint light fell from the sky, breaking through the darkness. Only then did the evil beings reluctantly retreat. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief, collapsing to the ground. They would never forget this nightmare for the rest of their lives. Swish, at this moment, a sound came from afar. Zhang Yuanling, who had escaped, had returned. His body was badly mutilated, and many of his wounds were visible to the naked eye. Although most of the evil beings had been attracted, there were still some wandering outside. He had encountered some of them. After a night of fierce fighting, it was inevitable that he would be injured. Great! You are all safe and sound. Zhang Yuanling pretended to be concerned, but he was very surprised. He had almost died when dealing with a small number of evil beings. How could they have survived under the siege of so many beasts? Suddenly, Zhang Yuanling glanced at Mo Xiaochai's belly, which was emitting a faint red light. His eyes flashed. Hearing this, the crowd did not say a word, but their hearts were filled with hatred and anger. He had used them as bait, but now he had returned. Zhang Yuanling hid the strange look in his eyes, sighed and said, "Fortunately, I lured away most of the monsters outside, so you could hold on." Hearing this, they could not help but sneer. They had seen shameless people, but they had never seen someone as shameless as him. He had set them up, but he said that they had survived because of him. However, the other party was a Taoist master. No matter how dissatisfied they were, they did not dare to voice it out. "We all have the same destiny. It's just a small favor. Don't take it to heart," Zhang Yuanling said slowly. Then, he looked at Mo Xiaochai and said, "Miss, you are pregnant, but you have encountered such a big disaster. You must have suffered a lot, right?" Mo Xiaochai was slightly vigilant. She retreated behind Huangfu Liuyang. Just now, Zhang Yuanling had stared at the fetus with a strange look. Mo Xiaochai could not help but worry when he asked this seemingly unintentional question. Huangfu Liuyang also sensed that something was wrong. He stood in front of him and cupped his fists. "She is my fiancée. Thank you for your concern, but it's not a big deal." Zhang Yuanling glanced at Huangfu Liuyang indifferently. He did not put him in his eyes at all. He only said, "Miss, it's better to have a checkup. If the fetus had an accident during the battle last night, it would be very bad." While saying this, he pushed Huangfu Liuyang aside. The meaning was clear: it wasn't expensive. He saw the abnormality of the fetus, and wanted to use this opportunity to investigate. Judging from his sinister intentions last night, this person was not a gentleman. Huangfu Liuyang was furious. "What do you want to do?" Zhang Yuanling gave him a sidelong glance and said indifferently, "I am helping your wife with good intentions. What kind of attitude is this? What a joke! How was he treating a patient?" Anyone with discerning eyes could see his intention. But his words were dignified and dignified. "I said, you don't need to worry." Although Huangfu Liuyang was afraid of his opponent's strength, at this moment, if he did not even dare to protect his wife, he would not be a man. Zhang Yuanling shook his sleeves and sent Huangfu Liuyang flying. He said coldly, "Ungrateful! This old man is doing this for your wife's sake. If you dare to stop me again, I will destroy your soul." He took a step forward and suddenly grabbed Mo Xiaochai's wrist. He wanted to grab her. His eyes flashed with deep greed. Last night, the beast tide could not do anything to them. It must be because of this fetus. Maybe it was a powerful and gifted fetus. Or maybe it was some kind of rare treasure that was brewing in the human body. However, at this moment, the aura of a peak 5-crown emperor suddenly erupted from behind Mo Xiaochai. The peak attack of a 5-crown emperor came even more abruptly. Zhang Yuanling's expression changed slightly. He could not help but retreat far away to avoid the attack. Although he had the abilities of a half-path master, he had been seriously injured in the battle last night. If he were to receive an attack, the consequences would not be light. A peak 5-crown emperor's offensive talisman? Humph! Zhang Yuanling coldly glanced at the silver-haired man behind Mo Xiaochai. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. "Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because your cultivation level is high." Zhang Yuanling sneered. "It's just talismans. Let's see how many of them you have." Talismans were limited. As time passed, his opponent would be at his wits' end. Su Yu did not say a word. He took out 13 talismans from his sleeve. All of them were peak 5 Crown Emperor's offensive talismans. 3 of them came from the 9-headed bird. The other 10 came from the solitary crocodile. There are indeed a few more. Why don't we try and see how many you can avoid? Su Yu walked over, activating all 10 talismans at the same time. Zhang Yuanling's eyelids twitched. He retreated again, his eyes flickering with a cold light. His current state was not enough to deal with 10 talismans at the same time. He looked at Emo Xiaochai's stomach with dissatisfaction. He coldly glanced at Su Yu and said, "Humph, let's wait and see." After he left, Emo Xiaochai heaved a sigh of relief. She cast a grateful look at Su Yu. "Thank you." Huang Fu Liang was also ashamed. Emo Xiaochai was his wife, but he was powerless to protect her. "This is only temporary. This person is afraid of the talismans in my hands because of his injuries. If he recovers, I'm afraid he will no longer be afraid." Su Yu's expression sank. Chapter 2077. However, it will take some time for his injuries to recover. There were many wounds on Zhang Yuanling's body that were bitten by evil creatures. It would take a long time for him to recover. Emo Xiaochai's eyes were filled with deep worry. Even then, with the cultivation of a half-step Daolord, no matter how slow his recovery is, he should be able to make a full recovery within a year, right? Emo Xiaochai frowned deeply and said, "We have just left the Daybreak Night civilization. Luo Ho still needs at least 3 years to reach the next stop." No matter what, they couldn't avoid Zhang Yuanling. In addition, Raha's body was small, so they didn't even have a place to escape. Huang Fu Liang cast his gaze out of the tent into the distance, but all he could see was a vast expanse of gray, with no end in sight. Those purple evil beings came from the depths of the clouds. What if I escape into that place? Huang Fu Liang thought. Su Yu shook his head. It's better not to. Based on my understanding of those things in the clouds and mist, what we have seen are only the lowest forms of evil beings. There are even more powerful black and golden evil beings. Their strengths are even more powerful. The fetus in Xiao Chai's belly can deter ordinary evil beings, but it's hard to say whether or not it can deter them. Huang Fu Liang and Emo Xiaochai gritted their teeth. They hated themselves for not being strong enough. They couldn't even do anything about the fetus being targeted by someone else. "However, you don't need to worry too much," Su Yu said calmly. "Even if he wants to recover his cultivation, will he really be able to?" "What do you mean?" Huang Fu Liang didn't quite understand. "Even the 3 of us together aren't as powerful as a single finger of his. It's very difficult to interfere with his recovery." Su Yu's eyes shone with a shrewd light. "It's naturally difficult for him to be disturbed during the day, but at night, we might be safe and sound in the dark, but he might not be able to." Hearing Su Yu's bold plan, Huang Fu Liang couldn't help but lick his lip. Now that things had come to this, did he have a choice? When Zhang Yuanling's cultivation recovered, they would all die. "As long as we can stall for time until the next station arrives, we will have enough distance to escape," Su Yu said. The 3 of them did as they were told. Before nightfall, Zhang Yuanling forced his way into a cave, killed the cave master, and forcefully occupied the cave master's abode. Zhang Yuanling was extremely annoyed as he set up a restriction around him. "Go for wool and come home shorn. If I had known that the woman was pregnant with a peerless child, I wouldn't have left in such a hurry." Zhang Yuanling secretly regretted it. If he could continue to maintain a good image, he wouldn't have to resort to this unscrupulous method of snatching the fetus. Wouldn't it be more honorable to accept the child as a disciple after it was born? But now that things had come to this, regret was useless. That Su Yu, I will never forgive him. Thinking about how the other party had taken advantage of his weakness to threaten him with a dozen 5 Crown Emperor-level talismans, Zhang Yuanling's heart was filled with hatred. If it wasn't for him, that woman would already be his. He just had to wait to identify what the fetus was. Wait until I recover from my injuries, I will definitely grind your bones into dust, Zhang Yuanling said hatefully. He then slowly closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Deep in meditation, Zhang Yuanling suddenly sensed something moving back and forth in the room. When he opened his eyes, he saw a little purple qilin walking around him, fumbling around as if it was looking into his storage space. Zhang Yuanling was stunned for a moment, wondering if he was hallucinating. He had set up 3 layers of defense around the cave, and each layer was at the level of a half-step downward. It was almost impossible to break through them. How did this little qilin get in? It really hid itself well, huh? The little qilin searched for a long time, but it couldn't find where the portable space was. Now that the other party had woken up, it could only curl its lips and swagger away. Watching it leave, Zhang Yuanling came back to his senses and chased after it. He only had time to see its back disappear into the night. He wanted to chase after this mysterious qilin, but the dangers of the night made him feel a lingering fear. He didn't dare to chase after it, so he could only retreat in confusion. He shook his head and went back to meditation. However, he hadn't been meditating for long when he felt his clothes being flipped by something. He was so shocked that he hurriedly woke up from his meditation. The cultivation technique circulating in his body was suddenly thrown into disorder, causing his blood to flow unsmoothly. A mouthful of blood was stuck in his throat. When he opened his eyes, he saw that it was the little qilin again. It was still searching for its portable space. How dare you! Zhang Yuanling was furious, and he struck out with his palm. However, the other party was able to turn reality into illusion, causing the palm strike to miss. Little qilin rolled its eyes and stuck out its butt at him. It passed through his tightly guarded space unhurriedly and left leisurely. When Zhang Yuanling gave chase, the other party disappeared into the night again. Having been intruded by an unknown little qilin twice, how could Zhang Yuanling still have the mood to recuperate? His entire body was on high alert. During this period of time, the little qilin indeed came by twice. When it saw that Zhang Yuanling was not in a meditative state, it rolled its eyes and left. Because of this, Zhang Yuanling did not dare to recuperate even more. He clenched his teeth and waited all the way until dawn. That little qilin did not appear again. It's them. Zhang Yuanling was surprised at first, but after thinking about it, he realized that it was Su Yu and the others who wanted to stop him from recovering from his injuries. Damn it! Having no other choice, Zhang Yuanling could only cultivate during the day. He believed that the other party wouldn't dare to come again during the day. Otherwise, if he were to catch up to him, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. What he didn't expect was that not long after he started meditating, the soul he left outside suddenly gave off a strong alarm. He immediately woke up from his meditation. Just as he opened his eyes, hundreds and thousands of black sword shadows came slashing at him. Ding ding ding, the sword shadows didn't cause him any harm. When they slashed at his body, it was like a kitchen knife slashing at a rock. However, what shocked and angered him was that this time, not only had the little qilin come, but Su Yu himself had also appeared. You're courting death. Zhang Yuanling was extremely angry, and he struck out with his palm. However, the little qilin on his shoulder displayed its extremely strange magical power of turning reality into nothingness, and it turned Su Yu into nothingness together with it. Oh, I've passed by the room. Su Yu smiled faintly and left calmly. You guys! Zhang Yuanling chased after him angrily. However, he saw that Su Yu had displayed some kind of yin-yang escape technique, which was actually not inferior to the secret technique of a peak 5-crown divine warrior. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. Zhang Yuanling wanted to chase after him, but he was hindered by his injuries. He could only grit his teeth and return to the secret room. However, what followed was a nightmare that couldn't be stopped. Every time Zhang Yuanling had just entered a meditative state, Su Yu and the little qilin would rush in. Su Yu even used it as a testing stone to practice his sword techniques over and over again. However, every time Zhang Yuanling chased after him, Su Yu was able to escape without a trace. For an entire day, he did not even manage to enter a meditative state for more than an hour. Following that, it was the same for a whole month. Not only did Zhang Yuanling's injuries recover extremely slowly, but he also did not rest well, and his eyes were bloodshot. As for Su Yu and the others, during the day, Su Yu came with his pet, and at night, his pet came alone. On the second night, Mo Xiaochai and Huang Fu Liang came together with their pet. That pet was like a demon, and it never needed to rest. This continued for several months, and Zhang Yuanling's spirit was haggard. His injuries were completely delayed, and there were signs that they were worsening. "You guys have gone too far." Finally, one morning, when Su Yu once again used him to test his sword techniques, and the power of his sword techniques had improved, Zhang Yuanling could no longer bear it, and with a furious roar, he chased after Su Yu. Su Yu used the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole, and instantly escaped into the dense fog outside of the Luoho Heavenly Eye. Zhang Yuanling hesitated for a moment, but he also chased after Su Yu. The two of them chased after each other in the dense fog. Zhang Yuanling was injured, and his speed was only about the same as Su Yu's. No matter how hard he chased, he could not catch up to Su Yu. Unknowingly, they were about to enter the depths of the fog. If they went any further, they would lose their sense of direction, and it would be difficult for them to go back. A trace of panic lingered in his heart. Zhang Yuanling stared at Su Yu from afar and said fiercely, "Sooner or later, you will get what you deserve." His heart moved slightly and he sped up to return. Since Su Yu had left the two of them, he could take this opportunity to find Mo Xiaochai and kidnap her. With this thought in mind, Zhang Yuanling hurried back. Su Yu had already expected this, and secretly contacted the little Kailan. The little Kailan obediently turned into a void, and wrapped the two of them in the void. In this way, even their auras were completely hidden, let alone humans. When Zhang Yuanling returned to the camp, he looked around, but could not find the two of them. Until Su Yu returned, and stood at the edge of the dense fog, calmly looking at him. Zhang Yuanling was angry and resentful. He wanted to chase after Su Yu again, but he realized that it was futile, and he had fallen into Su Yu's trap. With a cold snort, he returned to the cave and continued to train, racing against time to recover from his injuries. However, Su Yu and the others were determined to delay him, and they harassed him again and again. A year had passed, and Su Yu and the others were exhausted, but Zhang Yuanling was even more exhausted than they were. Zhang Yuanling could not take it anymore, and he took the initiative to find Su Yu and the others to make peace. However, it was obvious that Su Yu and the others would not agree, and they continued to disturb him. Zhang Yuanling was deeply remorseful, and he had to admit that his actions a year ago were indeed too reckless. If he had continued like this, he would have succeeded in delaying them for 10 years, let alone 3 years. However, some abnormalities were quietly appearing. It was unknown when it started, but the people in the camp discovered that the evil creatures in the dark were appearing earlier than usual. In the past, they would only appear when the sky was completely dark. However, recently, before the sky was dark, they appeared one after another, which was very different from the past. Many people looked worried, as many people who had been here for more than 1,000 years had never seen such a situation. As time passed, their worries gradually turned into anxiety. 2 years had passed, and the sky was still dusk, but groups of evil creatures had already emerged from the dense fog, and they were hunting and killing the people in the camp. Many people were not on guard, and they were tragically killed. Those with a bit of foresight realized that the situation was extremely bad. Finally, one afternoon, a large group of evil creatures appeared without warning, and captured more than 100 people. This incident caused the people in the camp to feel endless fear. The evil creatures no longer appeared at night, and they appeared even during the day. They could not wait any longer. A few strong men with status in the camp issued a summons to the entire camp. Chapter 2078. Lin Tianjian was one of the first people to ascend to Luoho 1,000 years ago. His cultivation had already reached the level of a half-step path master when he first ascended. However, he kept a low profile and was always in seclusion, paying no attention to what was happening in the outside world. If the evil beings had not changed, Lin Tianjian would have come out of seclusion at the request of the 8 experts in the camp. Su Yu and the others were also notified, and went to the camp square to participate in the meeting. The invasion of the evil beings threatened their lives, so they could only temporarily give up on disturbing Zhang Yuanling and go to the square. A stage was built in the center of the square. There were 9 people sitting on the stage, including famous experts like Lone Crocodile. The other 8 people looked very nervous. They glanced at the green-robed elder in the center from time to time. His face was calm and steady. Although he did not say a word, he gave off a majestic aura. His aura was even stronger than Zhang Yuanling's. Everyone, there is no need to say more about how serious the situation has become, Lin Tianjian said. The evil beings are already roaming around day and night. If we don't take action soon, I'm afraid that when Luoho reaches the next stop, there will only be a pile of bones left in the camp. Everyone's eyes were heavy. They understood this. The most important thing now was to figure out how to solve the problem. Elder Lin, how should we strengthen our defense? Lone Crocodile asked. Lin Tianjian was silent for a while, then shook his head. What's the use of defense? Unless we hide in the cave forever and never come out again. But was that possible? They could hide in the cave during normal times, but when Luoho reached the station, could they not come out? So, defense alone was far from enough. Elder Lin, what do you think we should do? Take the initiative to attack. Lin Tianjian said something that shocked everyone. Wouldn't fighting against the evil beings lead to death? However, Lin Tianjian said, what I mean by attack is not to fight them, but to find the source of the abnormality. There must be a reason why the evil beings have changed their patterns. If we can find out the reason, we can solve the problem at its root. The whole place was in an uproar. Finding the source means entering the fog, but it's too dangerous there. Elder Lin's idea is definitely correct, but how should we carry it out? Lin Tianjian said. I've decided to form an exploration team and go deep into the fog to find the source of the abnormality of the evil beings. Hearing this, the crowd immediately quieted down. Everyone averted their gazes, not daring to stick their heads out. There was no doubt that entering the fog would only result in death. I won't let you go for nothing. Lin Tianjian said, I will be leading this trip. Those who are willing to participate, each of them will be paid 100,000 Dao coins. We will only be recruiting 10 people in total. 100,000 Dao coins. Hearing this, many martial artists swallowed hard. They might not be able to collect so many Dao coins in half their lives. Many people were tempted, but then they heard Lin Tianjian say, but not everyone can join. Those who join must be at least a mid-stage 5-crown emperor, or have the combined battle prowess to kill an evil being alone. With how powerful the evil beings were, even initial stage 5-crown emperors were useless. Going in was just throwing their lives away. Only the middle stage could kill them. Including me and the others on the stage, we already have 8 people. We're still missing 2 people. Who wants to sign up? Lin Tianjian asked. These words extinguished the thoughts of most people. Strangely enough, everyone turned to look at Zhang Yuanling and Su Yu at the same time. In the past 3 years, it was no longer news that these 2 enemies were often at odds with each other. Zhang Yuanling's cultivation of the half-path master was unquestionable. Su Yu's ability to tangle with the half-path master for so long without being injured showed how extraordinary Su Yu was. These 2 people were obviously the most suitable candidate. I'm willing to join, Zhang Yuanling said after thinking for a moment. Lin Tianjian's eyes lit up and he laughed loudly. Haha, welcome, my friend. With a strong man of the same realm accompanying them, the safety of this trip would undoubtedly be greatly enhanced. Su Yu muttered to himself. Zhang Yuanling's intention was to take the opportunity to temporarily avoid Su Yu and the others, and try to recover his cultivation while carrying out the mission. In order to make Zhang Yuanling more useful, Lin Tianjian would probably help him recover his cultivation. If Zhang Yuanling's cultivation recovered, it would be a nightmare for Su Yu. He could not sit back and watch Zhang Yuanling succeed. I'll join too, Su Yu said. With him around, it would not be easy for Zhang Yuanling to recover his cultivation. As for the danger of the evil beings, with his movement techniques, it would not be a problem for him to escape. Lin Tianjian looked at Su Yu and said, "Release your desolation power." Su Yu nodded and released his desolation power. Lin Tianjian frowned. Perhaps you did not hear my request clearly. I hope for a mid-stage 5-crown emperor, not a mid-stage 4-crown emperor. Su Yu did not retort. He took out the Azura sword and slashed at the void with the ultimate ruin. In an instant, thousands of pitch-black sword shadows scattered like ink, and a terrifying sword energy shook the sky. All the early stage 5-crown emperor present were terrified. The power of this sword had already surpassed the early stage 5-crown emperor, and it was approaching the mid-stage 5-crown emperor. Lin Tianjian's eyes were filled with amazement, and he praised, "What exquisite swordsmanship! Amazing! All right, you're in." In fact, he was still slightly dissatisfied, and he hoped for a peak 5-crown emperor to step forward. But as he swept his gaze across the crowd, perhaps there were people who met the requirements, but none of them had the courage to do so. Therefore, he could only settle for the next best thing, and choose Su Yu. You have half a month to prepare. I hope you will set off in your best state. Su Yu stared deeply at Zhang Yuanling, and silently returned to the cave. In the past 3 years, seeing Su Yu display extraordinary strength, when he once again looked for a cave abode, some sensible cave masters would give up their own cave abodes to avoid being killed. Just like the cave master who was killed by Zhang Yuanling. Returning to the cave abode, Su Yu temporarily stopped interfering. The dangers of this trip into the fog were self-evident. He needed to take some precautions. Apart from the 13 talismans and his swordsmanship, his greatest reliance should be the yin-yang wings of Tai Chi. The yin-yang wings of Tai Chi were impressive, but they could only be used, and there was no guarantee of success. As he pondered, Su Yu took out another piece of the Path Master's bone. He had not been willing to integrate it into the yin-yang wings of Tai Chi, but now he had to make a choice. The yin-yang wings of Tai Chi was a divine weapon that could grow. There was no doubt about that. After integrating a piece of the Path Master's bone, it was already a top-notch true Emperor divine weapon. He did not know what would happen if he integrated this piece of the Path Master's bone. Unlike the previous piece of the Path Master's bone, this piece of bone contained the Path Master's blood, and not the slightest bit was lost. Once it was integrated, the yin-yang wings of Tai Chi would undergo unexpected changes. Chapter 2079. With that thought in mind, Su Yu teleported away and entered the dense fog. The dense fog had a strong isolation effect. Even if there was movement, it would be difficult to detect what was going on. He set up a simple defensive formation around him and let the little Kylin guard him from the outside. He began to combine the two. As time passed, the campsite was busy preparing for the expedition. All kinds of high-quality resources were given priority to the expedition team. Zhang Yuanling was also given a rare 15 days to recover, allowing his injuries to recover a little. Su Yu, when I come back from the dense fog, it will be your doomsday. His heart was filled with hatred, and he would not be satisfied until he crushed Su Yu's bones and scattered his ashes. Just as he finished healing his injuries, he suddenly noticed that the divine energy between heaven and earth was undergoing a rather subtle change. He came to the entrance of the cave and looked out. Divine energy invisible to the naked eye was gathering into the dense fog from all directions. Divine energy is gathering. Is someone cultivating and about to make a breakthrough? Such a large-scale divine energy anomaly was rare. Buzz, buzz, buzz. All of a sudden, Zhang Yuanling's eyes changed, and he took out the original life treasure that he often used. One could see that the treasure was trembling slightly. He looked at the rest of the people in the campsite and saw that they were all staring at their own treasures in shock and disbelief. Million treasure imperial sect. Zhang Yuanling gasped, his eyes filled with deep shock. This is the sign of the doctrine artifact fairy embryo descending into the world. Could it be that a path master is forging a doctrine artifact in the dense fog? His eyes flickered with deep shock and doubt. If he were to go there rashly, the path master would definitely think that he coveted the treasure. At that time, the path master could consign him to eternal damnation with a single thought. But what if it was a doctrine artifact fairy embryo that was born naturally between heaven and earth? He paced back and forth in the house, unable to make up his mind. Swish, all of a sudden, a figure flashed in front of his cave abode. It was Lin Tianjian. His eyes flickered with excitement as he said in a low voice, "Friend Zhang, you must have felt it." "Friend Lin, what do you mean?" Zhang Yuanling asked uncertainly. Lin Tianjian's eyes flickered slightly. "I mean to meet that senior, of course." Unlike Zhang Yuanling, Lin Tianjian took it for granted that it must be the path master crafting an artifact. The probability of a Tao artifact immortal embryo being born by the heaven and earth itself was almost zero. How could they encounter one so coincidentally? If we can ask this supreme being to come forward, it will be more than enough to deal with a mere evil being. With someone inviting him, Zhang Yuanling felt a lot more confident and said, "All right. Let's first confirm if it's a weapon forged for the Tao Master." The two half-step Tao Lords stepped into the mist side by side. When they were 100,000 feet apart, they stopped on their own accord, not rushing forward. Lin Tianjian bowed towards the distance and said, "We didn't know Ji Zun was here, so we couldn't welcome you from afar. Please forgive us, Senior." At this moment, Su Yu was at a critical juncture infusing the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole with the Path Master's bone. Hearing Lin Tianjian's voice, his expression changed slightly. He cast a meaningful glance at the small Kylan, and the latter immediately used the material-to-nothingness technique to turn Su Yu's body into nothingness and conceal all of his aura. Thus, he forced himself to be calm and said slowly, "Within 100,000 feet, all who enter will die." Lin Tianjian immediately shivered and bowed even deeper. Hearing that there was someone inside, Zhang Yuanling was also shocked. Sure enough, it was not a Tao artifact immortal embryo that was born by itself. Someone was forging it. "My name is Zhang Yuanling, and I didn't mean to disturb you. Please forgive me. Is he also here?" Su Yu's eyes flickered with a cold light. After mulling it over for a moment, he didn't utter another word. The more one spoke, the more mistakes one would make. This was how a Ji Zun treated a half-step Tao Lord. Hearing that there was no response from inside, Lin Tianjian and Zhang Yuanling became even more nervous. They didn't even dare to ask any more questions, as they were afraid of disturbing the Ji Zun forging the weapon. At the same time, many experts sensed the disturbance and rushed over. Lin Tianjian and Zhang Yuanling consciously kept them outside. In order to win the Tao Master's favor, Zhang Yuanling put in extra effort and attacked those who dared to step into the 100,000 feet range. Bah! Isn't he just trying to curry favor with the Tao Master? Is there a need to work so hard? A martial artist, who had been beaten by Zhang Yuanling to the point of spitting blood, complained. "Humph! He wants to be the Ji Zun's watchdog, but I don't think the Ji Zun will appreciate him." Another martial artist, who had been chased away by Zhang Yuanling, spoke resentfully. In fact, they were more envious. Being able to work for a Ji Zun was an unimaginably great benefit. As they spoke, the divine qi between heaven and earth underwent an intense change. The divine qi within the entire camp was instantly sucked away, leaving not a single trace behind. Zhang Yuanling's eyes were filled with shock as he murmured, "I was once fortunate enough to see a Dao master forge a Dao artifact immortal embryo, but that disturbance wasn't as great as this." Lin Tianjian deeply agreed. The Dao artifact immortal embryo is the key to determining the strength of a Dao artifact. The stronger the Dao artifact immortal embryo, the greater the phenomenon when it's born. The phenomenon before us isn't weak, but it's a pity that it's in a place with sparse divine qi like the Rahu heavenly eye. If it's in a place with abundant divine qi, the Dao artifact immortal embryo will be of a higher grade after it's formed. As all of the divine qi was sucked away, the sound of boiling liquid could be heard from the central area 100,000 feet away. Waves of powerful pressure radiated in all directions. The Dao artifact immortal embryo has formed. Zhang Yuanling and Lin Tianjian both revealed deep envy. Being able to possess a Dao artifact immortal embryo was their lifelong pursuit. Unfortunately, they never had this opportunity. Now they could only stare at it, unable to obtain it. After a long while, the threatening pressure gradually faded away. In the end, not a single bit of it was left. 100,000 feet away. Su Yu stared at the center of his palm, at the pair of wings that had changed drastically. Compared to the black and white colors of the past, the wings now had a jade-green color. At first glance, it looked like it was carved out of jade, giving off a brilliant glow. Streaks of yin and yang energy flowed within the wings, ready to explode at any moment. The most shocking thing was that there was a faint trace of the Dao Master's mysterious intent within the wings. That was the Dao intent of the common people's Path Master. Because the Dao Master's blood had also merged into it, the Dao intent had also merged into it. With the existence of this Dao intent, after the Tai Chi Yin-Yang wings were activated, the driving force wasn't just pure yin and yang energy, but also Dao intent. One could imagine how fast it was. Even a half-step Dao Master couldn't compare, second only to the Dao Master. Su Yu heaved a long sigh of relief. After half a month, he had finally succeeded. This expedition should be much safer. Suddenly, Su Yu sensed the movement in the outside world. His heart shook slightly, and he tried to use the brand new Tai Chi Yin-Yang wings. As a result, the jade-like Tai Chi Yin-Yang wings unfolded behind Su Yu's back, turning into giant wings that were 100,000 feet wide. The people who were waiting 100,000 feet away suddenly saw a corner of the wings poking out, and all of them gasped. This is a flying Taoist artifact fairy embryo? But isn't it too big? Lin Tianjian and Zhang Yuanling stared at the rippling wings that were flowing with Dao intent, and they all looked extremely envious. Right at that moment, the wings suddenly began to flap. Lin Tianjian immediately sensed that something was amiss, and he hurriedly said, "Everyone, retreat quickly." However, his warning was a little too late. The 100,000 feet wings flapped, stirring up a terrifying gust of wind. Apart from Lin Tianjian and Zhang Yuanling, who were barely able to resist it, the rest of the people, including the Peak 5 Crown Divine Warriors, were sent flying tens of thousands of miles back to the camp. At the same time, the dense fog that covered the sky all year round was blown away by the jade-like wings, revealing the land that had been covered by the fog for hundreds of millions of years. Before the two of them could clearly see the owner of the wings, the giant wings took off into the sky and disappeared again. Its speed was so fast that it didn't even leave a trace of its aura, so they couldn't determine its direction. A terrifying Taoist artifact fairy embryo, Zhang Yuanling gasped, his eyes filled with deep shock. Lin Tianjian reacted and said, "Elder, please wait." But there was no sign of that elder. They had come to visit in hopes that this elder could help them resolve the current crisis of the evil beings. Unfortunately, the elder had left directly, and they didn't know where he was headed. Lin Tianjian was stunned for a long time, and he let out a long sigh. Maybe it's our fate. Cutting off the extravagant hope of the Path Master's help, Lin Tianjian returned to reality. After returning to the camp, Lin Tianjian immediately summoned the 10 strong men from before, and they gathered at the camp's plaza. Who else hasn't come? Lin Tianjian did a quick count, and found that only 9 people had come. There was still one person who hadn't arrived. I'm here. In the distance, Su Yu ran over hurriedly. His face was slightly pale, and his whole body was drenched in sweat. It was as if he had done something that had greatly exhausted him. Lin Tianjian was displeased. 15 days have passed, and you still haven't prepared? There was a hint of reprimand in his tone. How could he have known that after Su Yu had used the brand-new yin-yang wings of Tai Chi, he had flown out of Luoho and into the chaotic space? Fortunately, his space law was astonishing, and he had returned in time. Otherwise, he would have died in the space turbulence. Of course, the consumption of the brand-new yin-yang wings of Tai Chi had been an eye-opener for Su Yu. Even with his cultivation of a 4-crown middle-stage divine warrior, more than 90% of his primordial power had been used up. If it had been used up, he really wouldn't have been able to return. Sorry for being late, but I'm fine. As Su Yu spoke, he swallowed a few Join elixirs, using these cultivation-enhancing elixirs as elixirs to replenish his primordial power. This scene made the mouths of many martial artists twitch. This kid was extremely wealthy. Cultivation-enhancing elixirs were rare resources that could only be found by chance, no matter where they were. Most of the divine warriors of heaven and earth recovered their primordial power by slowly meditating. For someone like Su Yu to directly consume cultivation-enhancing elixirs was a reckless waste of God's gift, and it attracted countless envious gazes. Lin Tianjian was also slightly surprised. Seeing that Su Yu had recovered his primordial power, he did not say anything else. He said, "Let's go." Under his lead, the group immediately stepped into the dense fog. They had been using teleportation without any regard for their primordial power the entire time, hoping to find the source of the mutation of the evil beings before nightfall. Unsurprisingly, the activities of evil beings were not affected by the fog during the day. Chapter 2080. However, they were all annihilated by the attacks of the 2 half-path masters. As they hurried on their way, they finally reached a place that no one had ever reached before. They also discovered a giant lake that ran through the mist. The lake was boundless, and white mist was constantly rising from it and dispersing into the air. Everyone stopped in their tracks. Lin Tianjian's eyes were filled with disbelief. Does all of the mist originate from this lake? What is this lake? Someone picked up a divine weapon out of curiosity and placed it in the lake. In the end, a shocking scene unfolded. The divine weapon was gradually decomposing into its original material. Retreat. The lake is dangerous. Lin Tianjian and the others sucked in breaths of cold air. Only Su Yu wasn't surprised by this at all. Su Yu had already guessed the origin of the evil creatures when he first saw them. Now, it seemed like they were exactly the same as the Creation Path Master's creation ocean. They must have been some creatures that had touched the creation ocean. They were lucky enough to survive and obtain the creation, but in the end, they gradually turned into evil creatures. However, Su Yu couldn't understand why there was a creation ocean above the Luoho Sea. Let's walk around the lake and take a look. Under Lin Tianjian's lead, they walked around the lake for half a day. However, the lake was really boundless, and they couldn't reach its end. Seeing that they were going to end up empty-handed and that the sky was getting dark, some people started to give up. Lin Tianjian was also hesitant. They had come here with great difficulty, and if they didn't bring back any useful clues, it would be extremely difficult for them to organize the next expedition. Forget it, let's go back. The lake was too huge, and they couldn't cross it. So, they could only give up on this expedition. Right at that moment, the water in the lake suddenly began to boil. Iron cages emerged from the bottom of the lake and floated on the water. It was unknown what these iron cages were, but they weren't afraid of the lake's corrosion. Under the force of the lake's water, the iron cages all moved toward them. That's strange. Is there something inside? Someone curiously came forward to observe. Crack! Right at that moment, all the iron cages opened at the same time, as if they were being controlled. Roar! A shriek that they were extremely familiar with, and it made their hair stand on end, fell into their ears. Looking up, there were actually hundreds of purple evil creatures squeezed into each iron cage. Retreat! Lin Tianjian's pupils constricted to the extreme as he shouted in shock. Zhang Yuanling's scalp went numb as well. There were more than 100,000 cages in front of him. Each of them contained hundreds of evil beings, and the total number was no less than 10 million. That night, when he fought against hundreds of thousands of evil beings, he had a narrow escape. How could he fight against 10 million now? Run! He had to escape. However, just as they were about to escape, the sound of flapping wings suddenly came from above the fog. Looking up, one could vaguely see black evil creatures. They actually had wings on their bodies and were extremely fast. A late-stage 5-crown emperor martial artist tried to escape with extreme speed. He did manage to escape from the few evil beings in front of him, but what made him despair was that behind him, there were countless evil beings that blotted out the sky. They were like an impenetrable wall. As soon as he barged in, he was immediately surrounded and attacked, turning into a bloody mist. He didn't even have time to scream. This scene caused the faces of many people who wanted to use teleportation to turn pale. Even Su Yu's expression was grave. He had unparalleled speed, but he couldn't use it now. Otherwise, he would directly crash into the mouths of the flying evil beings. Seeing the hordes of purple evil beings come ashore and surround them like a tide, Su Yu's eyes flashed with determination. He took out the earth fault furnace and threw it into the lake. Then, he jumped onto it and urged it to rush into the lake. Although this method couldn't stop the flying evil beings, the purple evil beings didn't dare to step into the lake, so they couldn't do anything to him. Su Yu's shocking actions immediately gave the martial artists present a glimmer of hope. However, they didn't have treasures that could contend against the lake water. However, the experienced half-step Daolord, Lin Tianjian, remained calm in the face of danger. He issued a command in his heart, and then he stared at the nearest cage and shouted, "Let's attack together and seize a cage." Everyone suddenly understood. Couldn't the iron cages float on the lake's surface? Everyone worked together to kill the evil beings. 2 half-Dao masters and a group of 5 crown emperors worked together to kill 100 purple evil beings, so it was quite easy. After clearing one of the iron cages, everyone immediately hid in it. Then, before the purple evil beings attacked them, they urged the iron cages to slide into the lake's center. As they watched the hordes of purple evil beings fall into the lake and die tragically, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The only thing they had to worry about was the flying evil beings in Sangtian. However, for some unknown reason, those evil beings just lingered above the iron cages for a while before retreating. Lin Tianjian heaved a sigh of relief. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. It's still too early to say such things. We are only safe for the time being. The main problem is how to escape successfully, Zhang Yuanling said. His words were immediately echoed by the others. Indeed, safety is only temporary. Moreover, I feel like if we want to escape, we should look for that lad called Su Yu. I don't know if you noticed, but when danger approached, that lad took out his small cauldron with great familiarity. How was he so sure that his small cauldron could withstand the lake water's corrosion? It was undeniable that this person was observant and had found the crux of the problem. Lin Tianjian recalled carefully and discovered that it was indeed the case. Suspicion appeared in his eyes. Could it be that this lad has been here before? or is the mutation of the evil beings related to him? Zhang Yuanling paused for a moment, then said in a low voice, "This lad is indeed a good-for-nothing. Back then, I saved so many people, as well as him and his 2 friends. However, he was not grateful at all. In the past 3 years, he interfered with my recovery from my injuries. Now, it seems like there really is a big problem with him." Hearing this, everyone's suspicions about Lu Qingchen deepened. Lin Tianjian pondered for a moment, then said, "Let's catch up with him first. We must get to the bottom of this." With so many of them working together to activate the iron cages, their speed was unimaginable. It was not something Su Yu could compete with. One day later, the sky gradually brightened. After losing track of Su Yu a few times, Lin Tianjian and the others finally managed to track him down using various magical powers and successfully caught up with him. Hearing the sound of water splashing behind him, Su Yu looked back and his expression changed slightly. How could a cage of evil beings catch up with me? Su Yu did not dare to wait any longer. He activated the small cauldron and fled frantically. However, the speed of the iron cages was too fast. After fleeing for an hour, they finally caught up with him. With a click, the side of the iron cages opened, revealing the creatures inside. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Looking up and down at the iron cages, he could not help but praise, "That's a good idea." Zhang Yuanling said sarcastically through the iron window, "Isn't it all thanks to you?" Su Yu did not give him the slightest bit of respect. He said calmly, "Speak human language. Don't be so proud of yourself. Come here immediately, we have something to ask you." Zhang Yuanling scolded. Su Yu had not been on guard against anything. Now that he had said that, how could Su Yu not be on guard? Without hesitation, he took out 10 peak 5-crown martial artist talismans and activated them all. He said coldly, "Keep your distance. Otherwise, I am not sure if I can destroy the iron cages." Seeing this, everyone's expression changed drastically. Zhang Yuanling was furious when he saw the talismans, but there was nothing he could do. Lin Tianjian glared at Zhang Yuanling reproachfully. Su Yu would be a fool to let his guard down with such a tone. Now, it would be difficult to trick him into returning to the iron cages. Lin Tianjian looked at Su Yu and said, "Little friend, we mean no harm. It's just that you seem to be very familiar with the lake. Have you been here before?" Su Yu thought for a moment. "I have not been here before, but I have been to a similar place once." Lin Tianjian's eyes lit up. "Little friend, do you have a way out? I hope you will enlighten us." Shaking his head, Su Yu looked around. "As you can see, I am also looking for a way out." Actually, Su Yu knew that the real way out was the path they had come from. This lake was very likely to be like the sea of creation, with no end in sight. Seeing that the sky had brightened again, the evil beings should have retreated back to the lake. It should be much safer to return now. "You really don't know?" Zhang Yuanling's eyes were filled with disbelief. He said in a low voice, "If you are lying, we will not forgive you." Su Yu ignored his threat. He maneuvered the deek furnace to make a turn, heading back to the shore. Lin Tianjian thought for a moment, then said, "Follow him." However, at that moment the lake suddenly underwent a subtle change. There was a faint, strong suction force coming from the bottom of the lake. But the main target of the suction force was the iron cage. With the iron cage as the center, a sizable whirlpool appeared on the surface of the lake, pulling the iron cage downwards. Lin Tianjian was shocked. "Oh no! These iron cages will float and sink to the bottom of the lake at regular intervals." Hearing this, everyone's faces turned pale, and they all fell into deep despair. Su Yu was also shocked, hurriedly leaving the whirlpool area. Seeing that the whirlpool was getting bigger and bigger, reaching the bottom of the lake, Su Yu suddenly had a thought, and he looked down to the bottom of the lake. He was slightly surprised to find that there was a huge, deep cave at the bottom of the lake. It was dry inside, and the size was just big enough to fit an iron cage inside. The purple evil beings are also afraid of the sea of creation, so the place where the iron cage is going must be quite dry. Looking at the shore, Su Yu could vaguely hear the sound of wings flapping. He made a decision decisively. He controlled the small cauldron, which immediately slid into the whirlpool. As the whirlpool rotated, the small cauldron was sucked into the tunnel at the bottom of the lake. Sure enough, the tunnel was dry, without a single drop of water remaining. Soon after, the clumsy iron cage was sucked in as well, and it kept falling over Su Yu's head. Su Yu put away the small cauldron and performed space folding, turning it into a speck of dust. It attached itself to the top of the iron cage, and it slid all the way to the bottom along with the iron cage. Bang! With a loud noise, the iron cage finally reached the bottom. Su Yu looked over, and he could not help but be surprised. He saw that the bottom of the lake was actually an underground world that had been built by man. Many of the fallen iron cages had been moved to a certain place by strange creatures of unknown races. Chapter 2081. Could the evil creatures be artificially created? Su Yu couldn't help but be surprised. He listened carefully and found that the golden creatures were highly intelligent, and they were all conversing with each other. This batch has passed the test and can be sent to the heavenly cage. When will it end? Who knows how long it will take for our 30th experimental site to come to an end? Our 30th experimental site is still fine, but I heard that the 9th experimental site is full of golden test subjects, each of whom is a peak 5 crown martial emperor. It's extremely dangerous. That's true. I also heard that there are Path Master level test subjects in the 6th experimental site. Su Yu's heart thundered as he listened to their conversation. He felt as if he had heard an incredible secret. However, there is one thing we should report to our superiors. Recently, some of the evil creatures haven't returned on time. They seem to have been attracted away by something. Is it that campsite? The people in the campsite are really bold, daring to use our 30th experimental site to travel. They really don't know how to spell the word death. Su Yu was secretly surprised. Could the entire Luoho be their experimental site? Alright, we should report this to the Supreme Martial Artist. Hearing that there were Supreme Martial Artists here, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had to leave immediately. Looking up, he saw that the tunnel above had already been sealed. There was no way to leave. He could only look for another way out. He did not move, waiting for the 2 golden creatures to leave. Crack! After they left, the iron cage opened from the inside. Lin Tianjian, Zhang Yuanling, and the others turned slightly pale. Hearing such a shocking secret, and with a supreme martial artist present, their lives would be in danger. Let's split up and find our own way out, Lin Tianjian said in a low voice. Zhang Yuanling's lips trembled, his heart filled with regret. Why did they have to get involved in this mess? He said, "Everyone, run for your lives." The 2 half-path masters fled in different directions. The remaining strong men were all anxious, and they dispersed in groups of 3 to 5. Being in a place where the supreme martial artists were, any cultivation was unnecessary. If they split up, they might be able to find an exit. Su Yu's gaze fell on the weakest martial artist. His cultivation was the lowest, so if there were really strong men chasing him, the one chasing him should have the weakest cultivation. Beep beep. Unexpectedly, they had just separated when the loud alarm of the formation resounded throughout the underground. The expressions of Lin Tianjian, Zhang Yuanling, and the others who were fleeing all changed. They never expected that they would be discovered so quickly, and they all sped up to escape. As soon as the alarm sounded, the golden creatures were alarmed. There were many of them, and they were all at the peak of 5 crown emperor level. They swarmed in all directions to search for the culprit. Because they were unfamiliar with the terrain, most of them were arrested in an instant. Even Lin Tianjian had become a captive under the siege of dozens of golden creatures. The martial artist that Su Yu was attached to was also captured. In the end, only Zhang Yuanling was left in hiding. Su Yu landed somewhere else and observed the situation quietly. The golden creature captured everyone and brought them to a certain plaza. There was a pool with a diameter of more than 1,000 feet. The pool was filled with fortune sea water. Beside the pool, a woman in white stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Her expression was cold and indifferent, but her cultivation was unfathomable. Ji Zun, we've caught the 7 intruders. The white-robed woman was actually a Tao master. A faint demonic aura emanated from his body. Shockingly, he was a Tao lord of the demon race. She turned her head to look at the crowd. All of a sudden, everyone, including Lin Tianjian, felt a stabbing pain in their souls. Their memories had all been flipped over. She could see through everyone's souls with just a glance. What kind of powerful soul attainments did she have? There is still one. No, 2 people who haven't been brought to justice. Continue searching, the white-robed Tao master said calmly. A large number of golden creatures split up again to capture the 2 people. Looking at Lin Tianjian and the other captives, she opened her red lips and said, "Since you know what you shouldn't know, you should be mentally prepared, right?" Lin Tianjian and the others begged for mercy. "Ji Zun, please spare our lives." The white-robed woman's lips curled into a playful smile. "I've always been benevolent and I like to give people opportunities. You can all enter this spiritual pool. If you can survive, I'll spare your lives." Lin Tianjian and the others turned pale. They had already noticed that the pool water was exactly the same as the lake water from before. They would surely die if they entered it. Seeing that they were hesitating, the white-robed woman swept her gaze over them. The martial artist on the far right let out a miserable shriek and fell to the ground. His soul had already been shattered, and his body and soul had been extinguished. "Since you don't want the opportunity one gave you, you can only die." The white-robed woman revealed a cruel smile. Despair appeared on Lin Tianjian and the others' faces, and they could only rush into the pool. Miserable shrieks echoed as the martial artists turned into a pool of blood one after another. Not even their dregs were left. All of them, including Lin Tianjian, had died. "Your luck isn't good. None of the 7 of you managed to evolve." The white-robed woman shook her head and sighed softly. Based on the success rate of 1 out of 10 people in the lake, all 7 of them had been killed. It was quite a failure. There are only 2 left. Don't disappoint me. Zhang Yuanling fled in fear, but no matter where he went, he couldn't find a way out. In the end, he was discovered by a group of golden creatures, and he was unfortunately captured. Only Su Yu was left. He had turned into dust, and the golden creatures couldn't find him. Zhang Yuanling was sent to where the white-robed woman was. She was sitting calmly beside the pool, and her bare feet were swinging in the pool. No matter how dangerous the lake water was, it couldn't harm her in the slightest. "You only found one?" The white-robed woman was slightly dissatisfied. She crooked her finger at Zhang Yuanling, and he fell into the pool involuntarily. "Ah!" Zhang Yuanling screamed subconsciously. However, he was stunned for a moment and found that he didn't feel any pain. Instead, a strange thing was drilling into his body. The white-robed woman smiled faintly. "You're lucky. Let me see what you've evolved into." She clasped her fingers together, and a black shadow was imprisoned in Zhang Yuanling's body. A look of surprise flashed across her face. "Eh? High-grade talent, soul shadow?" Then, with a flick of her finger, Zhang Yuanling stood up and stood in front of her. "Capture him and lock him up." The white-robed woman's eyes revealed a look of deep anticipation. Zhang Yuanling was immediately taken away by a group of golden creatures. Yes, this is an unexpected gain. High-grade talent is something that can only be encountered by chance. The white-robed woman nodded with satisfaction. Even with billions of creatures entering the pool, it was usually difficult to evolve into a high-grade talent. Now that he had obtained one, it couldn't be denied that he was extremely lucky. After a pause, the white-robed woman frowned. That person hasn't been captured yet? Fine, I'll do it, the white-robed woman said. Her eyes were pale, and a soul radiance, visible to the naked eye, radiated from her body and swept across the surroundings. The whole Luoho was swept by this soul radiance, and none of the creatures could hide from it. So, he's there, the white-robed woman said calmly. As soon as she finished speaking, she had already appeared in a corner. She pinched her fingers lightly and picked up a speck of dust. Then, she said calmly, it's rare to see someone who can use space to such an extent. Suyu was already mentally prepared. After all, he couldn't hide from a path master. He folded his body back and looked at the woman calmly. He had seen many path masters, so he was much calmer than ordinary people. Aren't you afraid? The white-robed woman asked calmly. Suyu didn't say a word. He was secretly thinking about how to escape. However, the woman obviously wouldn't give Suyu any chance to escape. She brought him back to the pool. With a flick of her finger, she threw him into the pool. Suyu's face changed slightly. How could he not know the dangers of the creation ocean? Splash! When he fell into the water, the pain he had imagined didn't appear. Instead, a strange power invaded his body. However, Suyu was very familiar with this power. It was the feeling of the creation energy. 2 successes in a row? The white-robed woman thought Suyu would definitely die. Unexpectedly, he was safe and sound. Then, she hooked an iron pestle from his body. What great luck! It's a top-grade talent, the Tao Destruction Pestle. The white-robed woman was moved. Usually, only people with great fortunes can brew it. I can't believe a 4-crowned emperor like you could produce such a thing. Suyu thought it must be because he had absorbed the creation energy of the previous creation tokens. Those inexplicable fortunes settled in his body. Now, after being stimulated by the pool water, they gave birth to strange fortunes. However, Suyu didn't feel happy at all. He had seen with his own eyes that people who evolved talents would eventually evolve into evil creatures that lost their minds. It seems like you don't know what the Tao Destruction Pestle is. The white-robed woman noticed Suyu's expression and said with a smile, the Tao Destruction Pestle is a top-grade talent. When it is used, it can destroy the Path Master's will instantly and cause great harm to the Path Master. Suyu said calmly, no matter how good the Tao Destruction Pestle is, it has nothing to do with me, right? You seem to know something. The white-robed woman glanced at Suyu. She wanted to search his soul, but she found that there were pieces of golden light spots in his soul. Soul path fragments? How is that possible? The white-robed woman was shocked. She immediately restrained Suyu in front of her and touched his forehead with her fingertip. After confirming that there were many soul fragments in his soul, she was even more shocked. You are just a 4-crowned emperor. You are still far from becoming a path master. Why is your soul showing signs of Tao transformation first? To become a path master, one needed Tao techniques, Tao body, and Tao soul. Tao techniques were the cultivation of one's own rules to the extreme, becoming an existence like the great path of the world. Tao body was the tyrannical body, which could destroy the world and was not afraid of any harm. On the other hand, Tao soul was an indestructible and indestructible soul. Only when all three were achieved could one break through to become a path master. Usually, after becoming a half-step path master, one could consider Tao techniques, Tao body, and Tao soul. It was the first time she had heard that a 4-crowned emperor's soul showed signs of forming a Tao soul. After staring at Suyu for a long time, the white-robed woman said, "You are very special. I don't have the heart to extract the Tao Destruction Pestle from your body. As you said, the Tao Destruction Pestle was born in your body, but it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to me." The white-robed woman pointed at her nose. "I will extract it and refine it into a treasure," Suyu said. "Then, I will become an evil creature." The white-robed woman said, "You really know something. However, you have no choice. Lock him up. Su Yu was taken away by the golden creature and imprisoned in an iron cage. It was a cage used to imprison evil creatures. However, there was a seal on the outside, so it couldn't be opened from the inside. Although he was imprisoned, Su Yu was not discouraged. Others might be afraid of the possibility of becoming an evil creature, but Su Yu was not. Chapter 2082. After the golden figure left, he quietly took out a bottle of medicine. It was the frost cloud dew that he had obtained from the Haoyuan sect leader's cave abode on the Fortune Sea. Before the Haoyuan sect was destroyed, they had exhausted the last of their resources to develop this medicine. It was effective for creatures that had come into contact with the Sea of Natural Fortune and hadn't mutated. As long as they swallowed it, they wouldn't turn into evil creatures again. After pondering for a moment, Su Yu swallowed one. After swallowing the medicine, Su Yu felt the fortune energy in his body boil and permeate outwards. Finally, it condensed into the mark of the Tao-destroying pestle on his chest. A thread of comprehension appeared in his mind. I see. This elixir is actually used to activate my innate talent. Su Yu suddenly understood. The reason why the living beings of the Sea of Good Fortune would eventually turn into evil beings was because the talent within their bodies had yet to be activated. Because of this, there was a drastic change, and in the end, they turned into evil beings. Su Yu carefully observed the bones in his body. The sign of the demonic transformation was that the bones were densely covered with scales. But at this moment, the scales on its bones were disappearing bit by bit. The Tao-destroying pestle? Su Yu's eyes were filled with excitement. At this moment, he had an impulse to laugh. The white-robed Tao master would never have imagined that she would inadvertently help Su Yu master such a nature-defying talent. Of course, this was inseparable from the fortune he'd obtained in the Sea of Fortune. If it wasn't for the accumulation of so much good fortune, how could a supreme-grade talent be born? According to the information he had obtained, the Tao Annihilation Pestle had great limitations. Every time he used it, he would have to wait for 3 years for the Tao Obliteration Pestle to recover on its own. Alternatively, he would have to wait for a Tao Lord to replenish the Tao Obliteration Pestle with a Tao Art before he could use it again. An attack that's second only to a Tao Lord? I must make good use of it. Su Yu muttered to himself. Su Yu looked at the cage in front of him and pondered. The white-robed Taoist master didn't take out the innate talent in his body on the spot. It was clear that he had to make some preparations to take it out. Su Yu had to take advantage of this time to come up with a solution. Otherwise, if she found out that Su Yu had activated his innate talent by himself, she would probably kill him. However, how could it be so easy to contend against a Tao Lord? He possessed Tao Arts, Tao Body, and Tao Soul, so he was basically immune to all attacks below the Tao Lord level. Under such pressure, Su Yu was not discouraged. Instead, he tried to search for useful items on his body. Although the 3 protective talismans given by the heaven-shattering Tao Lord had the power of a Tao Lord, they were currently sealed and could not be used. As for the other items, their might was limited, and it was impossible for them to harm the Tao Lord at all. All of a sudden, Su Yu took out a red hammer. It was the treasure that the Yun ancestor of the 4-symbol civilization had given to Su Yu as a reward. This item was given to him by a great demon when he was wandering the demon realm. It claimed to be a magic treasure passed down by the demon clan's royal family. He'd even suffered the encirclement of a group of half-step Tao Lords because of it, and he'd barely escaped with his life. The legacy of the demon clan's royal family must be extraordinary. Su Yu examined the red hammer carefully. He tried to use his primordial force and soul to explore this object. However, there seemed to be some kind of barrier on the surface of this object, and he was unable to see anything. I'm sure the Yun ancestor must have tried countless ordinary methods. Even a half-step Tao Lord couldn't do anything about it, so I don't have to waste my energy, Su Yu mused. He could only try other methods. After pondering for a long time, Suyu used the fate rule and slashed at it with the fate-severing blade. Suddenly, a thick layer of demonic energy surged out. Suyu used all of his rule and slashed at it fiercely. Finally, with a slight sound, the layer of demonic energy was forcibly cut off and peeled off from the red hammer. Somewhere far away, in a palace built of incomparably huge skeletons, an incomparably huge golden water dragon lay coiled in the palace. The dragon's scales on its body flickered, emitting a threatening dragon's might. Countless chains of the rule swam around its body, flickering indefinitely. The huge water dragon's head was filled with majesty, solemnity, and coldness. All of a sudden, the golden water dragon opened its eyes and looked up into the distance. There was shock in its eyes. The seal of the demon heart hammer has been broken by someone? Was it Nirvana or the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce? That is the fairy embryo of one of the 10 great forbidden Tao artifacts of the demon clan. How could he have known that the demon heart hammer was activated by the fate rule, one of the 8 great rules of heaven and earth? The legacy imprint left by the bloodline of the demon emperor had been erased by the fate rule. Pass down my orders. Tighten the defense. We must not let Nirvana or the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce approach the ancient dream forbidden land and disturb the indestructible ancestral demon. Suyu, who was completely unaware of this, had a look of surprise and contemplation in his eyes. The demon heart hammer? One of the 10 great forbidden treasures of the demon clan? Suyu was surprised. It was really an important treasure of the demon clan. However, it was not a royal inheritance. It was a dangerous treasure sealed by the demon clan. The function of this item was very peculiar. As long as it was knocked on the head of a person, it could deprive the person's memory and seal it in the demon heart hammer. The scope of its effect made Suyu's heart palpitate. Even the Path Master could not be spared. It was precisely because it threatened the existence of the Path Master that it was sealed by the demon clan and prohibited from touching it. It can barely be considered a usable item, but how can I knock on the head of the Path Master? He fell into deep thought. 2 years passed in a flash. At Luo Ho's camp, Huang Fu Liang sighed as he looked at the sky. His heart was filled with loneliness and sorrow. The expedition team had been gone for 2 years and had never returned. There was no doubt about their fate. If they could come back, they would have come back long ago. Husband, don't be sad anymore. When we enter the demon realm, I will find a way to use the royal inheritance treasure to summon Mr. Su's body. At least, I will not let him die without a place to bury him. Emo Xiaochai held a strand of Su Yu's hair in her hand. The demon clan's royal family was filled with many powerful treasures. There was a secret treasure that could find a body through a whiff of its scent. Sigh, we owe our benefactor a lot. Huang Fu Liang's heart was filled with sorrow. Emo Xiaochai also sighed deeply and touched her belly. If our child is born, he will recognize Su Yu as his godfather, even though we have never met before. Huang Fu Liang looked at Emo Xiaochai's belly with tears in his eyes and nodded deeply. In an even more distant place, the world was dyed red with blood, and it was filled with endless slaughter. On the back of a humongous demonic beast that was half a step to the Path Master level, sat a delicate figure in black armor with a cold temperament. She had a slender figure, and her facial features were as exquisite as a wild elf's. Her face, which was supposed to be cute and playful, was solemn at the moment. It was filled with maturity and vicissitudes of life. Her cultivation was even more terrifying, as it had reached the peak of the 5-crown divine realm. She held a long spear that was emitting a pitch-black mist, and it pierced through a giant skeleton that was wearing a purple crown. With a twist of the long spear, a boundless, dense, fierce energy burst forth and annihilated the skeleton. Chapter 2083. Crash. He heard the skeleton lose its ability to move and fall to the ground, its entire skeleton disintegrating. The third vertebra was glowing red, which was completely different from the rest of the bones. The pretty woman sucked it into her palm and kept it in her sleeve. As she moved her sleeve, 7 other similar vertebrae could be seen. Sienna, why don't you use the blood bones of the 8 defiant kings? Beside her was a tall old man with wings on his back. If Suyu was here, he would have recognized the old man as the Xianming Path Master who had a connection with him many years ago. It was his Milky Way star sand that had helped Suyu many times. When they left the Tao Tai cage, it was the Xianming Path Master who took Sienna away. Master, I want to keep it and use it when I need it, the pretty woman said calmly. You still miss that human, don't you? The Xianming Path Master's eyes were calm and full of wisdom. I don't. The pretty woman was Qin Sienna, who had been brought to the Azura world by the Xianming Path Master. The Xianming Path Master shook his head lightly. You don't want to achieve the body of a Path Master because you miss that human, right? As the successor of the 9 Nether Phoenix, Qin Sienna activated the body of the 9 Nether Phoenix with the help of the Xianming Path Master after returning to the Azura world. Her cultivation speed increased day by day. In just a few decades, she reached the level of an emperor. Right at that moment, the Azura world changed. After losing quite a few Downlords in a row, the Azura realm had fallen into a long period of chaos. Each of the 8 half-step Downlords had taken over a region. Qin Sienna, the successor of the 9 Nether Phoenix, came back and ruled the world as the young master of the Azura world. In the end, the 8 defiant kings attacked Qin Sienna and the Xianming Path Master together. Qin Sienna had to start a difficult journey to suppress the rebellion. After 20 years of fighting, Qin Sienna had changed from a young girl to a female Azura who was feared by everyone in the Azura world. Her cultivation was earth-shattering, and her combat strength was unparalleled. The 8 defiant kings were all killed by her long spear. Through the slaughter, her 9 Netherworld Phoenix physique was stimulated by the space, causing her cultivation level to increase explosively. 5 years ago, she reached the peak of the 5 Crown Emperor level. As long as she used the blood and bones of the 8 kings to cultivate, she would be able to form a Taoist body and become invincible. However, after 5 years, Qin Sienna still hadn't taken that step. Xianming Sect Master was well aware of the reason. She still hadn't forgotten the human called Suyu. Once Qin Sienna became a Downlord, she would go through a special process: soul reconstruction. In the past, when Azuras became Downlords, their minds would be affected by the excessive aura of slaughter in their bodies. In the end, they would forget their feelings and become an extremely cold and indifferent person. Xianming Dao Master was the same. To become the Azura Downlord, one had to sever their emotions. He thought that after decades, Qin Sienna would have forgotten her human lover. Who would have thought that even now, she still yearned for it. Because of this, she was hesitant to become the Dao Master. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have saved him. If I had let him die in the hands of that evil woman, perhaps you would have completely given up, Xianming Sect Master said indifferently. Qin Sienna's indifferent eyes were cold. Unfortunately, there are no ifs. Xianming Sect Master shook his head and said, You'd better not have too many expectations. With the dangers of the great beginning realm, with only his soul left, his soul should have been destroyed long ago, right? Even if he didn't, he could only be an ordinary person, struggling to survive in some small and inferior civilization. Qin Sienna clenched her fists and said in a low voice, Brother Su, you won't die. However, she couldn't help but think of Su Yu's desolate figure, struggling to survive in some city. A trace of bitter tears welled up in her eyes. When Su Yu first came to the great beginning realm, his cultivation was very low, and he only had his soul left. Even if his soul hadn't been destroyed, it was likely that he was struggling to survive. Thinking of his situation, Qin Sienna's heart wailed silently. For many years, she had wanted to find Su Yu. However, after the Tao Tai cage, everyone was transported to different regions. The world was vast, and the great beginning realm was vast and boundless. How could she find him? Even if he didn't die, we are now people from 2 different worlds, and it is impossible for us to have any interaction. Have you ever thought about how he will feel when you stand in front of him again? I believe he will feel ashamed of himself and think that he is not worthy of you. If I were him, I would probably never want to see you again, because I know that I am not worthy of you. Reuniting with you will only be painful. Qin Xian'er pressed her lips together tightly and said, Brother Su, you will not see me. He won't, she said that, but she could imagine the scene when they met. Would Su Yu really avoid her? Haha, if you really meet, you will verify whether what I said is true, Xianming's sect master said slowly. Changing the topic, he looked at the skeletal remains on the ground and said, The 8 kings have been pacified, and now you are the rightful young master of the Azura world. Once you inherit the 9 Nether Phoenix body, you can become the realm master of the Azura world. However, you are still missing one thing. Qin Xian'er said, the missing Azura Imperial Seal, right? Xianming's sect master nodded slightly. That's right. Ever since the 9 Nether Phoenix and I disappeared, the Azura Imperial Seal, which represents the identity of the Realm Master, disappeared without a trace. I think the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce must have something to do with it. We have to find it so that we can restore the Azura world. Qin Xian'er was not interested. If she had not been forced to train desperately for many years, she would have been too lazy to train. Now that the 8 kings had been pacified and there was no more danger, she did not want to waste energy looking for the Azura Imperial Seal. You have regained the cultivation of the Path Master. It will be easier for you to find it yourself, right? Qin Xian'er rejected him politely. Xianming's sect master knew Qin Xian'er's temperament. He smiled bitterly and said, Others try their best to fight for power and profit, but you insist on being forced by others. After thinking about it, Xianming's sect master's eyes flashed slightly. Don't you want to know if Su Yu is alive or dead? If he is, where is he? Hearing this, Qin Xian'er's eyes lit up, but she became vigilant again. What does that have to do with the Azura Imperial Seal? Haha. Of course it has a lot to do with it. Xianming's sect master twisted his beard and laughed. The Azura Imperial Seal is now missing, but there is one person who knows, and that is the undying ancestral demon of the demon realm. This person was born in the era when the world was created. There is nothing he doesn't know and nothing he doesn't know. When you ask about the Azura Imperial Seal, you can ask where Su Yu is. Qin Xian'er's indifferent face was filled with deep excitement. Are you serious? Of course. I have no need to lie to you. Qin Xian'er thought about it and said, All right. I will go. Xianming's sect master laughed and took out a space storage device. There is a handwritten letter for the current realm master of the demon realm in it. Show it to him, and he will let you meet the undying ancestral demon.